Mako-chan sits alone in the empty classroom during a break. Sakurai-san watches him from the doorway with a smile. Mako-chan leans out of the window and complains about the sweltering heat. He feels a sudden breeze and sighs with relief, noting how good the wind feels. He throws his arms up and shouts for the wind to blow even harder. Sakurai-san bursts out laughing and tells Mako-chan that he is hilarious. Mako-chan is startled to realize he isn't alone. Sakurai-san walks into the room and says he was being quite loud. She begins to mockingly imitate his dramatic pose while Mako-chan tries to get her to stop. Mako-chan turns bright red with embarrassment while Sakurai-san continues to laugh at him. The lunch break continues in the quiet classroom. Mako-chan asks Sakurai-san if she plans on eating anything. Sakurai-san sips on an energy drink and asks him if he knows the reason why she isn't eating. Mako-chan looks at her confused. Mako-chan stares at her as his heart starts to race and his face flushes. He stammers and starts to wonder if she isn't eating because he is there with her. Sakurai-san looks directly at him and waits for him to answer her question. She tells him that his time is up. Mako-chan hides his face on the desk, relieved that he didn't actually say his embarrassing thought out loud. Sakurai-san leans in extremely close to his face and tells him she will give him the correct answer. Mako-chan panics and tells her she is way too close. Mako-chan winces and shuts his eyes tight as Sakurai-san leans toward his ear to speak. Sakurai-san leans in even closer, teasing Mako-chan as he stares back in a daze. Instead of telling him the answer, she blows air directly into his ear. Mako-chan is stunned by the sudden action while she tells him that the real reason is a secret. Overwhelmed by the interaction, Mako-chan slumps forward until he is kneeling on the floor. He stays on the ground and begs her to at least tell him the answer, but she laughs and refuses. Sakurai-san smiles down at him, enjoying his reaction. Mako-chan huffs in annoyance as she sips her drink and claims the answer is actually quite obvious. She reaches out and offers him her drink as a consolation prize. Mako-chan begins drinking through the straw while she asks if he likes the taste of the juice. He continues to drink, admitting to himself that he does like it. Sakurai-san casually mentions that she already drank from that straw. Mako-chan immediately spits the juice everywhere in a panic. He chokes and coughs on the floor, complaining that it went up his nose. Sakurai-san calls him careless. She leans down and begins to wipe the juice off his face. Mako-chan watches her, completely flustered by the proximity. After cleaning him up, she tells him to let her know once he figures out the answer. She promises him something incredible if he gets it right and says she'll be waiting. Mako-chan's heart pounds as he tries to process what happened. Someone calls out for Sakuya from the doorway, and Sakurai-san turns toward the voice. Two girls arrive at the classroom door to collect Sakurai-san. They apologize for being late and tell her that it is finally time to go eat. Sakurai-san turns to leave with her friends. Mako-chan calls out for her to wait a second, and she looks back over her shoulder at him. She suddenly pulls him close again, catching him off guard. She tells him that she is leaving now. She leans right up against his face and tells him, "See you later, Mako-chan." Sakurai-san waves goodbye as she walks away with her friends. Mako-chan is left alone, his head steaming from the intense encounter. Mako-chan slumps back in his chair and tries to process what just happened. He sits in silence, still holding the juice box. He looks down at the desk, his mind racing as he remains flustered. Mako-chan stares at the straw on the juice box and turns bright red. He realizes that he just did an indirect kiss with her. He looks out at the clouds and tells himself that there is absolutely no way she did that on purpose. Elsewhere, Sakurai-san takes another sip of the energy drink through her straw. Her friends ask why she drinks that nasty juice all the time. She explains that she didn't like it at first, but once she started drinking it, she really began to like it. Later that day after school, Mako-chan and Sakurai-san are alone together in the library. She calls out his name to get his attention. Standing between the library shelves, Sakurai-san holds a book tightly to her chest. She blushes and asks Mako-chan if he will do her a favor. An open notebook and a pen lie ready on the library table. Mako-chan addresses Sakurai-san. Mako-chan begins to say something while sweating and blushing nervously. Sakurai-san smiles and asks him what he wants to say. Mako-chan holds his pen over the open notebook, deciding it is finally time to start. Sakurai-san laughs at him, asking if he is bored already. Mako-chan, his hair now tied back in pigtails, shouts back that they need to start studying seriously. The library is quiet as Sakurai-san continues to chuckle. She points out that he was the one who asked her for tutoring, then asks why he even bothered if he is going to act like this. She leans in close, causing Mako-chan to recoil. He stammers that she is too close and admits that there are people in class who are way smarter than he is. Sakurai-san looks at him with a soft smile and explains she asked for the hairstyling favor because he is the easiest person to talk to. Mako-chan is stunned into silence by her admission. Sakurai-san leans her head on her hand and lets out a playful chuckle. She twirls her pen and asks if he has found the answer to the question she posed during lunch. Mako-chan clarifies if she means the riddle about why she isn't eating, and she confirms that is the one. He looks away and fidgets with his fingers, admitting that he hasn't found the answer yet. Sakurai-san watches him closely from over his shoulder. She lets out a small sigh and says it is a shame he hasn't figured it out. Suddenly, she thrusts a bundle of papers toward his face. Mako-chan is startled and asks what she is giving him. She holds up peace signs and tells him it is an exercise booklet. Mako-chan is confused by the sudden addition to their study session. Sakurai-san smiles broadly and says that if he solves every question in the booklet, he might just find the answer to her question from earlier. Mako-chan agrees and prepares to write. He looks at the first question on the page, which asks who she is talking to right at this moment. He tentatively answers that it is him. Sakurai-san cheers that he is correct and tells him it is time for the next question. On the paper, the next prompt asks who she gets along with best among the boys. Mako-chan hums as he thinks hard about the answer. He shouts out the name Takahisa-kun, but Sakurai-san immediately tells him he is wrong, leaving him baffled. Mako-chan admits he thought it would be Takahisa-kun for sure. Sakurai-san agrees they get along, but hints that someone else holds the top spot. Sakurai-san leans her chin on her hand and declares that Mako-chan is actually the one she gets along with the most. Mako-chan blushes deeply at the revelation. Mako-chan is paralyzed with shock as he processes her words. Sakurai-san ignores his reaction and cheerfully announces it is time for the third question. The third question in the booklet asks what her favorite drink is. Sakurai-san rushes Mako-chan to provide an answer. Mako-chan crosses his arms and thinks intensely. Sakurai-san laughs and asks if the questions have somehow become too difficult for him. Mako-chan writes down cafe au lait, assuming she likes the same thing he does. Sakurai-san announces that he missed the mark. Mako-chan groans in frustration and puts his head in his hands while she confirms that he likes that drink. Mako-chan lies his head on the desk and notes that she really knows his preferences well. Sakurai-san proudly replies that of course she would know. She leans in close to his ear and whispers that she knows so much because it's about him. Mako-chan is left wide-eyed and speechless by her forwardness. Sakurai-san reaches up and begins to untie the pigtails from her hair. She looks down at him with a soft expression as she lets her hair down. Mako-chan can only stare back, completely entranced by the moment. The two sit in silence for a moment as the tension builds in the library. Mako-chan starts to nervously stammer out her name. Sakurai-san suddenly notices the time and shouts in surprise. She starts packing her things in a hurry, saying she has to leave immediately. Sakurai-san heads for the library door and waves goodbye. Mako-chan stands up and tries to stop her, but she just looks back with a curious expression. Mako-chan stammers and asks her about what she just said. Sakurai-san pauses at the door and looks back at him. She leans in extremely close to his face once more and says that the answer is... She places a finger against her lips and tells him it is a secret. Mako-chan stands there in a daze and quietly agrees. Sakurai-san waves as she walks away. The clouds drift past the classroom window. Mako-chan thinks about how she keeps everything a secret. Mako-chan walks down the school hallway with his backpack. He stops when he sees Sakurai-san waiting for him. Sakurai-san drinks her tea and suggests they study in the courtyard today to change the vibe. Mako-chan is surprised by the sudden change of location. The two students sit together at a table in the school courtyard under the shade of a large tree. They spend the afternoon focused on their notebooks. Sakurai-san works through math problems while Mako-chan keeps her company. Sakurai-san stretches her arms and cheers that she is finally ready for the tests. Mako-chan tells her she did a good job and she promises to ace all of them. Sakurai-san thanks Mako-chan for his help. He asks her why she chose the courtyard today, and she explains she wanted a change of pace before the tests start tomorrow. She reaches into her bag and pulls out a box of dessert blocks. She says she brought them as a small thank you gift. She opens the box and holds a piece of food out toward him, telling him to open his mouth and say, "Ah." Mako-chan is caught completely off guard and blushes intensely. He gulps as she continues to nudge the food toward him. Mako-chan slowly leans in and opens his mouth. Sakurai-san feeds him the dessert block while they sit at the table. Mako-chan chews on the dessert block with a stunned expression on his face. Sakurai-san leans in close and asks him if he thinks it is good. He blushes deeply and stammers that it is. Mako-chan notes that the snack has a strong aftertaste. Sakurai-san laughs and expresses her happiness that he liked it while she continues to pack her bag. She suddenly takes a sip from the juice box on the table. Mako-chan shouts for her to hold on. Sakurai-san stops with the straw still in her mouth and asks him what is wrong. Mako-chan panics and stammers while Sakurai-san realizes she is drinking from his juice box. She looks at the box in her hand and asks if it really belongs to him. Sakurai-san laughs off her mistake while Mako-chan tells her it is fine and not to worry about it. He then asks her what she thinks about another sip. Mako-chan is frozen with shock as he realizes they are having another indirect kiss. Sakurai-san holds the straw out to him and tells him to relax and take a sip. Mako-chan moves forward to take a drink. He shuts his eyes and takes a long sip of the juice through the straw. Sakurai-san watches him closely and asks him if it is yummy. Mako-chan pulls away from the drink with a bright red face. Mako-chan and Sakurai-san both pant heavily as they sit close together in the courtyard. Sakurai-san leans forward and takes a drink from the straw of the juice box. Mako-chan stares with wide eyes and a bright red face as she repeatedly takes sips of the juice he was just drinking. Sakurai-san exhales with relief after her long drink. She sits back at the table while a large gulp travels down her throat. She holds the juice box against her flushed face and smiles, admitting to Mako-chan that she feels the exact same way he does. Mako-chan remains frozen and sweating, unable to say anything as he looks directly into her eyes. Sakurai-san places her hand over his and tells him to stay still for a moment. She leans in close to his face in the quiet courtyard. Mako-chan blushes intensely and stammers her name. Sakurai-san uses a handkerchief to gently wipe away the juice from his lips. She finishes cleaning his face and says he is all clean now. She begins packing her bag, telling him she has to go meet up with some other friends. Sakurai-san walks away while waving and making peace signs. She tells Mako-chan to give the tests their all tomorrow, leaving him standing there in a daze. She walks alone across the school grounds under the afternoon sun. Sakurai-san continues toward the gate and notices 3 of her friends waiting for her. Her friends ask how her studying at the library went. One friend jokes that she must have a boyfriend, while Sakurai-san explains she just felt very focused there. Sakurai-san turns bright red as she continues walking. Her friends look at her with confused and curious expressions. Sakurai-san blushes deeply and admits that it would be kind of nice if she had a boyfriend. Her 3 friends stop walking and stare at her with stunned expressions. They remain silent as they watch her walk ahead, completely surprised by her confession. The group of girls continues walking together toward the school gate under the large afternoon clouds. Mako-chan stays behind in the courtyard and blushes as he thinks about the concept of sharing an umbrella with her. The scene shifts to a rainy day in the past. Sakurai-san stands in the hallway and watches Mako-chan walk past her. She lets out a sigh and checks her phone while waiting for the rain to stop. She exhales and watches the water fall outside. Heavy rain continues to wash over the empty school grounds. The story transitions back to the day of the entrance ceremony. Students in formal suits walk through the hallway. Sakurai-san approaches a vending machine and begins browsing the drinks. She spots the energy oolong tea and thinks it looks completely disgusting. Mako-chan stands at the vending machine and looks at the drinks with interest. Mako-chan buys the energy oolong tea and tells his friend there is a new kind. His friend yells that it looks terrible while Sakurai-san watches from behind. Sakurai-san keeps her eyes on Mako-chan as he holds his new drink. Sakurai-san's eyes remain fixed on Mako-chan from behind. Mako-chan buys the energy oolong tea again at the vending machine. Sakurai-san watches him, noting his repetitive choice. She reflects on how her interest started simply because he was a guy who bought gross-looking juice. Her gaze follows him through various moments, walking down the hall, studying in the classroom, and sitting with his friends. She recalls seeing him help other people and letting them rely on him while always giving his all. Sakurai-san watches Mako-chan's back and admits to herself that he was just an ordinary guy. She passes him in the hallway as he sips his drink, her eyes naturally drifting toward him once more. In a flashback, Mako-chan is surrounded by a group of male students who are being friendly and energetic. He laughs while a friend puts an arm around his neck. Sakurai-san watches the interaction from afar. Returning to the rainy day, Sakurai-san stands at the school exit and looks down at her shoes, hesitant to step out into the downpour. A voice suddenly offers her an umbrella, surprising her as she thinks about not wanting to get wet. Mako-chan stands before her with a friendly smile, holding his umbrella out for her to take. Sakurai-san's eyes widen in surprise, Mako-chan's figure reflected clearly in her pupils. She stammers in confusion as Mako-chan calmly offers his assistance. Mako-chan introduces himself as Makoto Nasuno and mentions they are in the same class. He hands her a spare umbrella he keeps for rainy days and tells her not to feel bad about using it, while inwardly cheering that he got her name right. Mako-chan waves goodbye and heads out into the rain with his umbrella. Sakurai-san stands frozen in the doorway, staring after him in silence. Sakurai-san looks down at the spare umbrella in her hands, her face flushing slightly as she processes the encounter. She clutches the handle of the umbrella close to her chest and smiles, whispering Makoto-kun's name to herself. Sometime later, Sakurai-san stands in the school hallway taking a sip of juice. She spots Mako-chan down the corridor and watches him from afar. She pulls the straw from her mouth and thinks to herself that the drink is disgusting. Mako-chan notices her and waves energetically while calling out to her. Sakurai-san looks up, surprised to be noticed. She thanks him again for the umbrella he lent her. Mako-chan tells her not to mention it, but she insists it was a lifesaver. He smiles and says he is just glad it came in handy. Sakurai-san watches him as he holds a can of black coffee. Sakurai-san notices he isn't drinking his usual gross tea and asks him about it. He looks surprised that she was paying attention to his drinks. Mako-chan rubs the back of his head and admits that he finally realized the energy tea was actually pretty gross. Sakurai-san stares at him for a moment and confesses that she has actually started to like it. She bursts out laughing at the situation while Mako-chan watches her completely bewildered. Wiping a tear from her eye, she calls him weird and thrusts her juice box toward him, telling him he can have it. Mako-chan tentatively takes the drink and thanks her. Sakurai-san waves goodbye and heads off, calling him Makoto-kun as she leaves. Under a bright sky, the two of them continue to cross paths, talking to each other more and more as time passes. The two exchange morning greetings as they arrive at school. Sakurai-san calls him Makoto-kun while he addresses her as Sakurai-san. Their friendship grows as they discuss videos from their favorite YouTubers. Later, Sakurai-san cheers for Mako-chan while he runs laps, telling him to hang in there even as he struggles for breath. Time continues to pass as they spend more and more time together under the shifting skies. While sitting together, Mako-chan hesitatingly tries to start a conversation. Sakurai-san notices his hesitation and asks him what he wants to say. Sakurai-san leans in extremely close and teases him, asking if he has a cold since his face is so red. Mako-chan flinches and tells her that she is just way too close to him. Sakurai-san stops and looks at him with a surprised, blank expression. She notices how close they are sitting as their hands nearly brush against one another. Sakurai-san begins to blush as she finally realizes the true nature of her feelings for him. She admits to herself that she doesn't actually dislike the physical proximity. Everything begins to make sense to her as she stares at him in silence. Mako-chan looks at her with concern and calls out her name. Sakurai-san shakes off her serious thoughts and playfully leans into him. Mako-chan lets out a startled grunt at the sudden contact. The scene transitions with Sakurai-san asking Mako-chan what his preferred type of girl is. The story returns to the memory of the rainy day at the school entrance where Sakurai-san stands alone. She gazes out at the heavy rain, waiting for it to subside. Mako-chan's umbrella handle suddenly appears in front of her face as he calls out her name. Mako-chan smiles at her and asks if she has forgotten her umbrella again. Sakurai-san smiles softly as she processes Mako-chan's kind gesture. The two students huddle together under the single umbrella to shield themselves from the downpour. Mako-chan is completely flustered as they lean into each other while walking away from the school building. The scene shifts to a busy train station where people are passing through the ticket gates. Mako-chan taps his pass at the gate and enters the station, walking along the concourse with a relaxed expression. He stops and looks around when he hears a familiar voice calling out his name from somewhere in the crowd. Sakurai-san appears dressed in a large casual t-shirt and carrying a backpack. They are both surprised by the coincidence of meeting outside of school. Mako-chan explains that he is there to shop for a specific book. Sakurai-san looks at him curiously and asks if that is really the only thing he is doing. Mako-chan is confused by her line of questioning. She suddenly grabs his sleeve and suggests that they go together since she has errands in the same direction. Mako-chan turns bright red at her forwardness. Sakurai-san leads the way through the station with an energetic smile, seemingly delighted by their chance encounter. As they walk together, Sakurai-san notes that this is the first time she has seen him since summer vacation started. Mako-chan agrees that she is right. He admits that he didn't recognize her at first because it was his first time seeing her in street clothes. Sakurai-san looks over at him, momentarily caught off guard by his observation. She stops walking and turns to face him properly. Sakurai-san poses for him and asks for his opinion on how she looks, wondering aloud if he finds her cute before bashfully taking it back. Mako-chan stares at her with a flushed face and tells her she just looks like herself. Sakurai-san laughs at his answer and asks what that is even supposed to mean. They continue their stroll through the building. Mako-chan asks if she has gone anywhere special for the summer, but she says she has just been playing games at home. He tells her his vacation has been pretty much the same. The two walk past a display of mannequins wearing various bikinis and swimsuits. Sakurai-san looks at a frilly top and says she wants to wear something like that. She turns to Mako-chan and asks if he wants to go to the beach with her sometime. She points to another set and calls it super cute. Mako-chan stammers and blushes, looking completely out of his element. Sakurai-san leans in close with a playful smirk. She asks Mako-chan which style of swimsuit he actually prefers. Mako-chan stares at a simple white bikini and gets flustered thinking about her wearing it. He quickly tries to brush it off, telling himself that he wouldn't know about those things. Sakurai-san catches him staring and asks if he likes swimsuits like the one on the mannequin. Mako-chan shouts in surprise, his face turning bright red. Sakurai-san hums and walks away while Mako-chan tries to explain that he only thought it would look good on her. She takes the white bikini off the rack and holds the top against herself. She looks at him with a mischievous smile and promises to wear it for him one day. She leans in and asks if he was just imagining her in the suit. Mako-chan is left breathless and speechless as his face flushes even darker. Sakurai-san suddenly gets excited about another item and tells him to come check it out. She points at a revealing men's thong swimsuit and laughs. She notes that it definitely seems to be made for men. Sakurai-san laughs heartily at the ridiculous swimsuit while Mako-chan looks away completely embarrassed. The rest of their afternoon is filled with various activities. They look at more clothes, some ice cream, and Sakurai-san teases him for buying a serious study guide. They walk through the mall together, clearly enjoying each other's company. Sakurai-san looks over at Mako-chan with a soft, affectionate smile and a light blush on her cheeks. Mako-chan looks back at her, his own face blushing as he realizes how much he is enjoying their time together. Mako-chan breaks out in a sweat as Sakurai-san leans her head against his arm. The sun begins to set as they sit together on a park bench. They realize they have spent the entire day hanging out together. Mako-chan asks her what she originally had planned for the day. Sakurai-san admits that she completely forgot her errands. She turns to him with a happy expression and says it is fine because she got to go on a date with him. Mako-chan is stunned by her sudden declaration. Mako-chan's face flushes bright red as he processes her words. He tries to convince himself that it could not have been a real date. He wonders to himself what it would mean if she actually considered their time together to be a date. Sakurai-san maintains a soft and playful smile as she watches him. She gazes at him warmly, her own face glowing in the evening light as she sits on the bench. Sakurai-san asks him directly if he would choose to call this anything other than a date if it were up to him. Mako-chan is left wide-eyed and speechless. Their hands rest on the wooden surface of the bench, just inches apart from each other. She suddenly places her hand over his, causing him to let out a startled gasp at the physical contact. Mako-chan is completely overwhelmed, his face turned a deep crimson as he stammers while trying to form a response. Sakurai-san's smile remains steady and inviting as she holds his hand. She leans in close and whispers for him to take her on an actual date next time. Mako-chan is left completely stunned by her request. He is left frozen with a blushing face and wide eyes, unable to comprehend her direct invitation. Sakurai-san smiles brightly and blushes, looking incredibly happy. Mako-chan blushes deeply and looks away as he agrees to the plan. Sakurai-san's smile remains wide and cheerful. As the sun sets, the two talk about going to the beach. Mako-chan promises to invite her next time and she cheers with excitement. Night falls over the quiet suburban neighborhood. A smartphone rests alone on top of a soft pillow. In her room, Sakurai-san rolls around on her bed while checking her phone. She eventually sits up on her knees and stares intently at the screen. She looks at Mako-chan's contact information on her phone. Sakurai-san flops face down into her pillow before rolling onto her back and staring at the ceiling with a sigh. She lies on her side and playfully pokes at his contact photo on the screen. She lies back on her bed with her hands behind her head and smiles up at the ceiling. Mako-chan sits in a formal posture on his bedroom floor staring at his phone in the dark. He sweats nervously as he thinks back to the time they spent together. Mako-chan panics and wonders if he can actually go through with asking her out. He reaches for the phone but hesitates, worrying that she might find it lame even though she was the one who suggested it. He sits in total silence, unable to figure out what to do. Mako-chan accidentally hits the call button. He panics as the screen shows he is calling Sakurai-san, thinking this is way too much for him. Sakurai-san picks up almost immediately. Mako-chan freaks out and shouts that he made a huge mistake while she calls out his name. He stares at the screen and sees Sakurai-san in her loungewear. He blushes and starts to sweat profusely. They both stare at each other through their screens in silence for a second. Both of them shout in shock at the same time. Sakurai-san yells for him to look away and not to look back until she gives the word. Mako-chan apologizes and asks why it ended up being a video call. Mako-chan sits formally on his knees and apologizes again. He explains that he simply pressed the wrong button. Sakurai-san adjusts her clothes on her bed and tells him that he really surprised her. She says he should warn her before making a video call. She zips up her hoodie and huffs that she can't believe him. Mako-chan agrees that they are ready to talk now. Sakurai-san sits on her bed and twirls her hair nervously while looking away. Mako-chan's eyes go wide as he continues to blush. He asks her what the deal is with the sudden video call. He notices that she has her hair down and finds it striking. Sakurai-san calls his name, snapping him out of his thoughts. Mako-chan stammers and tries to find the right words to bring up their previous conversation. Sakurai-san watches him with a small smile. Sakurai-san mentions there is a place she wants to go. Mako-chan asks if she has a specific destination in mind, and she tells him he should already know the answer. Sakurai-san leans in and tells Mako-chan that she wants to go to the same place he does. Mako-chan reacts with total surprise. Mako-chan clutches his chest as he thinks about what it means for the two of them to go somewhere together. Mako-chan asks her where she thinks that place is. Sakurai-san sits back and waits for him to answer. Mako-chan gathers his courage and asks her if she wants to go to the beach with him sometime. Sakurai-san agrees to the invitation. Sakurai-san tells him to look forward to seeing her in a swimsuit. They say their goodbyes and end the video call for the night. Mako-chan exhales and looks at his calendar for August, thinking about the upcoming trip to the beach with Sakurai-san. Sakurai-san smiles to herself as she looks at the call confirmation on her phone. Sakurai-san rolls around on her bed, unable to wait for their next date. The sun shines brightly over the clouds on the day of their trip. Mako-chan stands at the beach with his gear and wonders if she actually wanted to be invited. He tries to convince himself that running into her previously was just a coincidence and nothing more. Sakurai-san arrives at the beach in her swimsuit and apologizes for making him wait. Mako-chan brings up her swimsuit and Sakurai-san confirms that it is the one he helped her pick out earlier. Sakurai-san asks him how she looks, which causes Mako-chan to grip his bag strap and tell himself not to get the wrong idea about her. Mako-chan struggles to respond as he realizes she looks even better than he had imagined she would. Sakurai-san smiles and Mako-chan tries to look away to avoid becoming more flustered. Sakurai-san grabs Mako-chan's hand and says they should have a great time, leaving him wondering if she actually has feelings for him. Sakurai-san sits down on the sand as the summer sun shines down on the beach. Mako-chan plants the pole for their beach umbrella into the sand. Mako-chan asks if they are finished setting up, and Sakurai-san says they are nearly done while he finds himself distracted by her positioning. Mako-chan focuses on Sakurai-san as she leans forward on the sand. Sakurai-san catches Mako-chan staring and asks what he is looking at, causing him to shout in surprise. Mako-chan insists he was not looking at anything, but Sakurai-san leans in to question him while he turns his head away. Sakurai-san reaches out and pinches both of Mako-chan's cheeks. Sakurai-san pouts and calls Mako-chan a pervert. Mako-chan stares back at her with a stunned expression. Sakurai-san tells him she will show him more since he is so fascinated while she reaches into her bag, leaving Mako-chan holding his face in confusion. Sakurai-san holds up a tube of sun lotion and asks Mako-chan if he wants to apply it to her. Mako-chan reacts with complete shock. Mako-chan becomes incredibly flustered as he imagines rubbing sun lotion onto her body. Mako-chan thinks that because such an act is typical for a boyfriend, she must genuinely have feelings for him. Mako-chan begins to speak her name as he stares at her. Sakurai-san laughs and reveals she was just joking, telling Mako-chan not to take such things seriously. Mako-chan falls backward in frustration. Mako-chan holds his chest and thinks about how he nearly jumped to a dangerous conclusion. Sakurai-san hands Mako-chan an inner tube and asks him to blow it up while she applies her lotion. Mako-chan agrees to the task. Sakurai-san looks back over her shoulder. Mako-chan begins to inflate the inner tube with his breath. Sakurai-san lets out a cheerful laugh. The sun shines down as Sakurai-san cheers Mako-chan on. Mako-chan struggles to pull Sakurai-san through the water on her float. She tells him to go faster while he protests that he is going as fast as he can. Mako-chan observes Sakurai-san floating in the water and concludes that she simply enjoys teasing him. A massive wave crashes down on them, causing them both to shout out as they are submerged. Both Mako-chan and Sakurai-san tumble through the water beneath the surface. Mako-chan and Sakurai-san resurface from the water. Mako-chan coughs and asks her if she is all right. Mako-chan is startled to find Sakurai-san floating right next to him. Mako-chan feels her pressed against him and apologizes. Sakurai-san asks what he is sorry for as he starts to say her name. Sakurai-san leans on the inner tube and looks back at him to see what he wants to say. Mako-chan stares at her and remains silent. Mako-chan begins to think that she might actually have feelings for him. Sakurai-san leads Mako-chan across the beach by the hand. Mako-chan worries that he will get the wrong idea if she continues to act this way. Mako-chan looks at her and wonders if getting the wrong idea about her intentions would really be so bad. The sun begins to set behind the clouds over the ocean. The two of them wait at a train station platform overlooking the beach as evening sets in. Sakurai-san thanks Mako-chan for inviting her. They talk about how much they did during the day and agree that they are exhausted. Sakurai-san tells Mako-chan that she has a lot of fun when she is with him. Mako-chan blushes and says that he had fun too. Sakurai-san asks if he really thinks so. Mako-chan insists he had a lot of fun and she accepts his answer with a smile. Sakurai-san gazes out at the horizon while Mako-chan looks at her from the side. Mako-chan continues to stare at Sakurai-san as the sun goes down. Sakurai-san smiles to herself as she adjusts her hair. Sakurai-san says it would be great if they could come back here again, and Mako-chan smiles as they stand together against the sunset. Mako-chan tries to say something but finds himself stammering while Sakurai-san looks at him with a questioning expression. Sakurai-san smiles gently at him. Sakurai-san takes Mako-chan's hand and agrees with his unspoken sentiment. The two of them stand side by side as Sakurai-san begins to suggest something else. Sakurai-san says they should definitely come back together, leaving Mako-chan completely stunned. Mako-chan becomes incredibly flustered as he looks down at their intertwined hands and shouts Sakurai-san's name. A train pulls into the station right as the two are standing on the platform. Mako-chan continues to shout his thoughts, but his voice is drowned out by the noise of the arriving train. Sakurai-san looks on with a confused expression, unable to hear anything Mako-chan is saying. Sakurai-san apologizes and tells him that the train noise prevented her from hearing a word of what he said. Mako-chan realizes that his attempt to speak was completely wasted due to the train and sighs in disappointment. Sakurai-san tilts her head in confusion while Mako-chan starts laughing awkwardly to hide his embarrassment. Mako-chan crouches down and buries his face in his hands, telling Sakurai-san that it was nothing when she asks him what is wrong. Sakurai-san looks up and notes that she understands. Sakurai-san grabs Mako-chan's hand and tells him it is time to go home. Sakurai-san leads Mako-chan toward the train. Mako-chan decides that he no longer cares if he is misinterpreting her actions. The sun rises over the neighborhood houses on a new day. Sakurai-san's alarm goes off and she wakes up in her bed. Sakurai-san gets out of bed and walks across her room. Sakurai-san gets dressed in her school uniform. Sakurai-san stands before her mirror and ties her hair back. Sakurai-san inspects her appearance in the mirror. Sakurai-san smiles and confirms that she is ready for the day. Sakurai-san spots Mako-chan walking ahead of her on the way to school. Sakurai-san smiles as she prepares to greet him. Sakurai-san calls out a morning greeting to Mako-chan, startling him. Mako-chan reflects on the beach trip and how he decided to accept whatever feelings he has for Sakurai-san. Mako-chan contemplates the decision he made back then. Mako-chan walks to school and calls himself a wuss for failing to ask her out again. He tries to stay positive about seeing her today. He reaches his classroom and thinks about how he finally gets to see her. Mako-chan looks into the room and wonders if she is already there. He spots her talking with friends about where they went over summer break. The group of girls continues their conversation near the windows. One girl asks another if her story is really true as they keep chatting. Mako-chan stares at Sakurai-san and feels his heart thumping. A classmate shows Sakurai-san a new autumn product and suggests she take a look. Mako-chan watches her intently. The girls discuss trying out the new product together. Mako-chan blushes as he keeps his eyes fixed on her. The students sit at their desks while the teacher gives a lesson at the front of the room. Mako-chan glances at Sakurai-san from his seat during the lecture. He finds himself distracted by how good she looks while she takes notes. Mako-chan thinks she looks really pretty today and wonders what is going on. He continues to stare at her from the side while questioning himself. Sakurai-san turns around to smile at him. Mako-chan wonders if he has officially fallen in love with her. The teacher tells the class that they should go straight home and not wander around just because it is a half day. Mako-chan packs his bag and sighs that he could not talk to her at all, but Sakurai-san calls out to him and offers a cheerful greeting. Sakurai-san notes that it has been a while since their beach trip and asks if he did anything afterward. Mako-chan stammers and says he did not really do anything. Sakurai-san mentions she did not do much either while she hops onto a desk. She then asks Mako-chan what he thinks about her. Mako-chan nervously remarks that the atmosphere around her seems a bit different today. Sakurai-san tells him she noticed him looking at her all day and asks if something is wrong. Sakurai-san calls Mako-chan sharp and admits that there really might be something different about her today. Sakurai-san taps her chin and thinks while Mako-chan blushes and waits for her to continue. Sakurai-san leans her face in very close to his and asks him what he thinks has changed about her. Sakurai-san giggles and asks if he is speechless because her face is so close to his. Sakurai-san tells him that she thinks the answer is actually quite easy to figure out. Mako-chan remains flustered and can only manage to stammer in response. Sakurai-san keeps her eyes fixed on him as she prepares to explain herself. Mako-chan continues to blush while looking back at her. Sakurai-san decides that she will give him a big hint and leans forward further on the desk. Sakurai-san smiles with her eyes closed and presents herself as the hint for him to figure out. Sakurai-san keeps her face close to Mako-chan while he struggles to respond. Mako-chan stammers and tries to find the words to answer her question. Mako-chan begins to say that she is way something as he blushes. Mako-chan finally tells Sakurai-san that she is cuter than usual today. The two of them a long moment of silence after Mako-chan's compliment. Mako-chan suddenly freaks out and shouts at himself for his embarrassing comment. Sakurai-san sits on the desk with a deep blush as she looks at Mako-chan. Mako-chan stammers and attempts to apologize for what he said. Mako-chan grabs his bag and runs out of the classroom while shouting a goodbye. Sakurai-san remains in the classroom with a stunned expression on her face. Sakurai-san stays silent as she looks toward the doorway where Mako-chan left. Sakurai-san lets out a heavy breath and reflects on Mako-chan's words. Mako-chan runs away as fast as possible while yelling in frustration at himself. Sakurai-san crouches down on the floor between the classroom desks. Sakurai-san holds her blushing face in both hands and smiles widely to herself. Sakurai-san remains crouched on the classroom floor while hiding her blushing face in her hands. She stands up with a determined expression and pumps her fists in excitement. She presses her hands against the window frame and looks out at the bright sky. Later that day, Sakurai-san walks with her friends and discusses the lipstick she wore earlier. The sun shines brightly over the school building during a hot lunch break. Sakurai-san looks back toward Mako-chan as he sits at his desk in the classroom. Mako-chan slumps over his desk and groans about how hot it still is. He feels a slight breeze from the window and leans back to enjoy the sensation. Thinking he is alone, Mako-chan poses dramatically and shouts for the wind to blow even harder. Mako-chan is startled when he hears Sakurai-san laughing at him and asking if he is bad with the heat. Mako-chan panics upon realizing Sakurai-san saw his behavior. She teases him for letting his guard down while he frantically tries to cover up his embarrassment. Sakurai-san continues to laugh heartily while Mako-chan turns bright red. Mako-chan realizes it is already lunchtime and asks Sakurai-san if she is going to eat anything. Sakurai-san leans in close and points out that they are in the same situation they were in before summer break. She asks if he has finally figured out the answer to her previous question. Mako-chan stares at her intently as his heart begins to race. Mako-chan realizes the question is about why Sakurai-san spends time with him. Sakurai-san watches Mako-chan and waits for his response. Mako-chan admits he has a guess but hesitates to say it out loud. He looks down at his hands and confesses that he is unsure if his idea is correct. Mako-chan says he feels like his guess might be going too far. Sakurai-san observes him from her seat on the desk. Sakurai-san stands up and leans closer to ask if he needs another hint. She brings her face even closer and asks if he would rather just have the answer instead. Mako-chan panics as his heart rate increases. Sakurai-san leans in and asks again why he thinks she hangs out with him. She begins to explain her reasons starting with the word because. Mako-chan suddenly grabs her shoulders and shouts for her to wait. Sakurai-san stops and looks at him with a confused expression. Mako-chan looks down and asks her to wait just a little longer. He grips her shoulders and explains that he would feel bad if he did not figure out the answer on his own. Mako-chan looks at her with determination and declares that he will absolutely figure it out. Sakurai-san smiles and says she understands. The two of them stand in silence near the window. Sakurai-san looks down with a blush. Sakurai-san tells Mako-chan she will give him a big hint and begins applying lip balm to her lips. Mako-chan reacts with surprise. Mako-chan blushes as he watches her finish applying the balm. Sakurai-san looks down and reminds him that she said she would wait as long as it takes for him to find the answer. Sakurai-san warns him that she might lose her patience and tell him the answer herself if he takes too long. She hides her hands behind her back as Mako-chan continues to watch her. Sakurai-san tells him to hurry up and figure things out. After Mako-chan promises to do so, her friends call for her from the doorway and she prepares to join them. Sakurai-san turns toward her friends as they announce they are heading out. Sakurai-san says goodbye to Mako-chan, who is left blushing intensely. Sakurai-san waves as she leaves the classroom. Mako-chan stays behind and thinks about the hint she gave him. Mako-chan touches his own lips as he reflects on her actions. He stands in the quiet room with a stunned expression. Mako-chan is left alone in the classroom as the sun shines through the window. Outside in the hallway, Sakurai-san fans her blushing face and exhales sharply after giving him her special hint. The classroom is empty as the clock on the wall shows the time is past 1 o'clock. A student uses an eraser to clean the chalkboard in the classroom. Mako-chan finishes cleaning the chalkboard and sets the eraser down. He tells himself that everything is clean now. Mako-chan complains about the heat as he removes his blazer. Sakurai-san surprises him by calling his name from the doorway. Sakurai-san notices that Mako-chan is at school early. He explains that he was assigned to day duty, and she tells him he did a good job. Mako-chan mentions that he usually arrives later and asks Sakurai-san why she is there so early. She smiles and says the reason is obvious. Sakurai-san leans forward on a desk and tells Mako-chan that she specifically wanted to see him. Mako-chan blushes as he processes her words. Sakurai-san looks at him while resting her face in her hands. Sakurai-san calls Mako-chan's name as she leans closer to him. Mako-chan reacts with shock and a heavy blush while looking directly at her. Sakurai-san notes that Mako-chan has switched to his winter uniform. She suddenly grabs his blazer from the desk and says she's going to borrow it for a moment. Mako-chan tries to stop her, but Sakurai-san begins putting on his blazer anyway. Sakurai-san shows off the blazer and asks Mako-chan if it suits her. He stares at her in surprise, realizing she is wearing his uniform. Mako-chan tells her to take it off quickly because he was sweating earlier and thinks it might smell. Sakurai-san stops and looks at him with a blank expression. Sakurai-san says the scent is fine and notes that it simply smells like Mako-chan. She offers to trade her cardigan for his blazer, but he refuses the offer. Mako-chan argues that her behavior is excessive. Sakurai-san calls him whiny while she rests her chin on her finger and looks at him. Sakurai-san puts on a sad face and asks if wearing his clothes is not okay just because it is her. Mako-chan is visibly confused and startled by her reaction. Mako-chan stammers and tries to deny that he has a problem with her wearing his clothes. Sakurai-san giggles to herself while watching him. Sakurai-san laughs out loud at his reaction. Mako-chan complains about her behavior while she wipes a tear from her eye and apologizes for teasing him. Sakurai-san pauses her laughter and prepares to say something else. Sakurai-san tells Mako-chan that she loves it, causing him to react with confusion. Sakurai-san beams and clarifies that she really loves Mako-chan's scent while wearing his blazer. Sakurai-san touches Mako-chan's cheek and asks him if he likes the way she smells. Sakurai-san leans her face closer to Mako-chan and looks into his eyes. Mako-chan reacts with shock as he notices her scent. He wonders to himself about the way she smells. Mako-chan blurts out that her scent is great, which leaves Sakurai-san looking surprised. Mako-chan looks down and feels embarrassed by his outburst, while Sakurai-san remains silent. Sakurai-san laughs again and asks him what his comment even meant. Mako-chan remains flustered. Sakurai-san says she should really give him her cardigan and begins taking off his blazer. Mako-chan insists he is fine, then suddenly remembers something. Sakurai-san tosses her cardigan over Mako-chan's head, completely covering his face. Sakurai-san leans forward with a smile and greets Mako-chan for the morning. Mako-chan gives his morning greeting in return while a wide shot shows the clouds in the sky. The school prepares for the upcoming festival. Students ask for tools like scissors and paint as they work on a banner for the event. Students decorate the hallways with flowers and posters. Sakurai-san's friends wave to her as the school fills with the noise of festival preparations. Mako-chan lifts a heavy box and carries it out of the staff room. He thanks the staff for their time and heads out into the hallway. Mako-chan walks through the hallway with his box. Nearby, students excitedly discuss their plans to visit various food stands like yakisoba and tapioca during the festival. Mako-chan thinks about the school festival while he moves his load. He thinks about Sakurai-san and the time they have spent together. Mako-chan decides he should invite her to spend the festival day with him. Suddenly, Sakurai-san calls out to him, having already located him in the hallway. Sakurai-san asks Mako-chan to come with her for a bit. He asks if she can wait until he finishes delivering the box he is carrying. Sakurai-san tells Mako-chan to just follow her and pulls him along by the shoulder. He shouts for her to wait as he is led away. Sakurai-san says that everything is fine while Mako-chan reacts with total confusion. Sakurai-san sits and places a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. Mako-chan stands behind her as they prepare for the events of the day. The sun shines over the school building as clouds drift through the sky. Mako-chan follows Sakurai-san up a flight of stairs while still carrying his box. He asks where they are going and she tells him they are headed somewhere nice. Mako-chan questions if it is against the rules for them to be in the stairwell. Sakurai-san laughs and assures him that it is perfectly fine. They reach a door at the top of the stairs and Mako-chan is surprised to find that it is unlocked. Mako-chan stares in awe at what he sees as Sakurai-san tells him to take a look. Sakurai-san spreads her arms wide and exclaims how pretty the view is from the roof. Mako-chan is awestruck by the sunset. As Sakurai-san explains, she wanted to this secret spot with him after finding the door open. Mako-chan mentions it is his first time up there since the roof is normally locked, and Sakurai-san agrees it is usually closed off. Sakurai-san leans in with a secret smile and admits that being there like this makes her heart race. They discuss their roles in the upcoming festival and realize they both have their breaks scheduled for noon. Sakurai-san hums thoughtfully while looking out over the railing. She excitedly lists off all the festival attractions she wants to see, including the haunted house and the crepe stand. Mako-chan watches her and wonders if he should finally take the initiative to invite her. Sakurai-san leans in close again and asks him if he knows about the specific festival event meant for couples. Mako-chan reacts with total shock at the sudden mention of couples. Sakurai-san leans toward his ear to a secret. She whispers about a legendary spot at the festival where any confession of love is guaranteed to be a success. Sakurai-san laughs and says it is probably just a rumor, leaving Mako-chan stunned and speechless. She looks at him with a knowing smile and asks him what he would do if it were up to him. Sakurai-san steps into his personal space and asks if he would prefer to be the one confessing or the one being confessed to. Mako-chan stammers and asks Sakurai-san which option she would choose for herself. Sakurai-san points to herself and asks if he is really asking her. Sakurai-san leans against the railing and says that she would prefer to be the one to confess. Mako-chan reacts with complete shock at her answer. Sakurai-san smiles as she gazes at the horizon while Mako-chan watches her in silence. They hear the sound of the door opening and react with surprise. Sakurai-san grabs Mako-chan's hand and says they have to hide because the teachers have arrived. Two teachers walk onto the roof and look around the area. Sakurai-san and Mako-chan hide behind a wall as the teachers discuss where to put a banner. Sakurai-san pulls Mako-chan close to her and tells him to be quiet. Mako-chan panics at the sudden physical contact. The teachers talk about how students used to come to the roof in the past, while the two remain hidden. Both characters are panting and blushing heavily while pressed together in their hiding spot. The teachers decide there are no issues and leave the roof. Sakurai-san and Mako-chan wait a moment before agreeing to head back down. They both wipe sweat from their faces and let out a deep sigh of relief. Sakurai-san remarks that the experience really made her heart race. Mako-chan sits on the ground and agrees that his heart was racing as well. Sakurai-san laughs and says the situation felt like something from a manga, while Mako-chan blushes and joins in with an awkward laugh of his own. Mako-chan remains silent and looks away with a heavy blush on his face. Sakurai-san asks Mako-chan if he was about to say something, which causes him to react with surprise and rub the back of his head. Mako-chan nervously looks down and starts to bring up the day of the school festival, eventually attempting to ask her to go with him before she cuts him off. Sakurai-san leans in close and enthusiastically shouts that she will definitely go with him, startling Mako-chan. Sakurai-san pauses and looks at him with a deep blush on her face. The two of them an awkward and nervous laugh after the sudden outburst. Sakurai-san says she is looking forward to it, while Mako-chan begins to speak again. Mako-chan gives a small blushing smile that leaves Sakurai-san looking surprised. They sit together on the roof and agree that they are both looking forward to their upcoming plans. The day of the school festival finally arrives. Mako-chan and Sakurai-san's class has set up a maid cafe for the festival. A group of students dressed in maid outfits discusses their plans for their break, but Sakurai-san apologizes and says she already has plans. Her friends tease her and ask if she is going with the prospective boyfriend she had mentioned previously, causing Sakurai-san to react with shock. Sakurai-san tries to explain that he is not her boyfriend yet and that they have not made much progress, but her friends find it hard to believe and keep questioning her. Sakurai-san blushes and explains that she wants him to be the one to speak up since she is unsure of his feelings. Her friends note that she is quite a late bloomer when it comes to romance. Her friends continue to tease her, suggesting she just wants to hold hands while exploring the festival together. Sakurai-san reacts with surprise to their bluntness. The group talks about the romantic potential of a kiss by the campfire during the closing party, which leaves Sakurai-san feeling even more flustered and embarrassed. Sakurai-san watches Mako-chan from a distance as he works in his server uniform. She keeps her eyes fixed on him as he goes about his duties. Mako-chan reaches out to check on the supplies for the cafe. Mako-chan uses a clipboard to verify that they have enough plates and cups ready for the customers. He takes a deep breath and thinks about the plan to walk around the festival with Sakurai-san later that day. Sakurai-san calls his name while he is busy polishing a cup, and he turns to look at her with a smile. Sakurai-san stands before him in her full maid uniform and prepares to greet him. Sakurai-san smiles and asks Mako-chan if he thinks the outfit suits her. She waits for his reaction while showing off the details of her costume. Mako-chan is completely speechless and blushes as he takes in her appearance. Sakurai-san lifts her skirt slightly and asks again if she looks okay. Mako-chan reacts with visible shock at her proximity. Mako-chan finally manages to tell her that she looks really cute. Sakurai-san beams with happiness and thanks him for the compliment. Mako-chan tries to bring up their plans for the day, but they are interrupted by a classmate calling for Sakurai-san's help. Sakurai-san apologizes and says she has to go help for a while. Mako-chan sighs and says that it is fine. Sakurai-san waves and says she will see him later as she runs off, leaving Mako-chan alone. Sakurai-san begins her work at the maid cafe and greets the customers with a cheerful welcome. The clock shows it is 11 o'clock as Sakurai-san goes about her duties. Mako-chan watches her and tells himself he can wait one more hour for her break to start. Sakurai-san notices Mako-chan watching her as she continues her work. Sakurai-san serves the guests and maintains a cute and happy persona for the cafe. The clock shows it is almost noon and the cafe remains very busy with guests placing their orders. A long line of people forms in the hallway outside the classroom as the festival continues. The clock passes noon and Mako-chan starts to panic. He tries to manage the crowd by asking them to form 2 lines while they wait. A classmate begs Mako-chan to stay and help for a bit longer because the rest of the staff has not arrived yet. Sakurai-san is also asked to stay on duty longer than planned because she is the only one the staff can count on. Mako-chan's co-worker thanks him for agreeing to stay, but Mako-chan is clearly exhausted by the workload. Sakurai-san's friends beg her to help for just a short while longer until the others return. Mako-chan directs the line of customers while a pouting Sakurai-san finally agrees to keep working. The staff apologizes for the wait as another cup of coffee is served. The clock on the wall shows that it is now 20 minutes past noon. Sakurai-san continues to greet customers even as she starts to break a sweat. By 1 o'clock, the hallway remains packed with people waiting to get in. Mako-chan serves more guests and thanks them for coming. The hours tick by and he is still stuck working well into the afternoon. Mako-chan finally gets a break and checks the time on his phone, which reads 2:40. He watches other couples enjoying the festival and feels discouraged. Sakurai-san suddenly calls out to him from behind. Sakurai-san is out of breath as she asks if Mako-chan has been waiting long. He assures her it is all right since he only just managed to get away from his own duties. Sakurai-san excitedly suggests they go get crepes first. Mako-chan has to break the news that he heard the crepes are already sold out. They overhear other students complaining that most of the food stands have run out of items. Sakurai-san reacts with shock at the realization. Mako-chan looks at her with a sympathetic expression. Sakurai-san slumps her shoulders in disappointment. Mako-chan reaches out a hand toward her. Sakurai-san laughs weakly and admits that she was really looking forward to walking around together. Mako-chan sees how upset she is and realizes he needs to do something. He tells her that everything is going to be fine. Mako-chan suggests there are still plenty of places they can visit and reaches out his hand to her. Mako-chan offers his hand and invites Sakurai-san to go take a look around the festival with him. Sakurai-san is taken aback when Mako-chan uses the nickname she gave him. Mako-chan takes her hand and tells her they should just go ahead. Sakurai-san agrees while feeling a bit stunned. They walk through the crowded hallway together holding hands, drawing attention from other students. Sakurai-san looks at Mako-chan from behind as he leads her through the festival. Sakurai-san tightens her grip on Mako-chan's hand. She looks down with a quiet expression while following him. Mako-chan looks back to check on her and asks what is wrong. She quickly shakes her head and insists that it is nothing. Sakurai-san begins to say something but pauses. She looks up at him with a blush and a smile. Sakurai-san grips his hand firmly when he calls her name in surprise. Sakurai-san smiles widely and declares that nothing is wrong at all. Mako-chan smiles happily as they walk together through the school. They discuss visiting the tapioca stand first, and Mako-chan agrees to the plan as they continue holding hands. Later at the festival's wrap party, Mako-chan tells Sakurai-san he is glad they managed to visit so many stands. Sakurai-san expresses her total satisfaction with the day. Sakurai-san urges Mako-chan to hurry to the next event, but he worries about having to do something in front of a large crowd. The girl in front tells her friend to stop pushing her so she can prepare herself for the boy who asked her out. Mako-chan and Sakurai-san observe them from the side. Sakurai-san asks Mako-chan if he thinks that girl is taking part in the confession event at the wrap party. Mako-chan begins to think about the nature of a confession event. Sakurai-san asks Mako-chan if he intends to participate in the event. He denies it immediately and says it would take too much courage to confess publicly, which she acknowledges. Sakurai-san tells him that it is fine, and Mako-chan notes that while it could be fun, he has other thoughts. Sakurai-san takes Mako-chan's hand and starts to express her own preference for the evening. Sakurai-san smiles and tells him that she would rather just spend time talking with him for now. Sakurai-san pulls Mako-chan toward a place to sit down and chat. He blushes and tells her not to push him while they head toward the festival bonfire. A wide view of the school grounds shows students gathering for the closing party as the day ends. Sakurai-san sits on the lawn and pats the grass next to her, telling Mako-chan to sit down. They sit together and talk about how the high number of customers at the maid cafe earlier in the day caught them both by surprise. Sakurai-san looks up and mentions she had planned on going on a date with him to see the festival. Mako-chan is shocked by the mention of a date. Sakurai-san sits up and asks him if he really didn't think their day together was a date. Mako-chan stammers and tries to respond. Sakurai-san reacts with exaggerated shock and disbelief. Sakurai-san covers her face and cries out that she is the only one who considered it a date. Mako-chan reacts with panic at her outburst. Sakurai-san peeks at him through her fingers while continuing to claim that she is completely shocked. Mako-chan asks Sakurai-san if she is just teasing him. Sakurai-san sticks her tongue out and admits that she has been found out. Sakurai-san laughs and apologizes for scaring him. Mako-chan admits he was genuinely looking forward to their time together. Mako-chan looks up thoughtfully. Sakurai-san hugs her knees and smiles while sitting on the grass. Mako-chan agrees with a quiet word. Mako-chan notes that the festival will be over soon. Sakurai-san stares into the distance in silence. They sit together as the wind blows through the field. Mako-chan says that the end of the festival feels a bit sad and Sakurai-san agrees with him. Mako-chan looks up at the sky. Sakurai-san gazes toward the horizon. A sudden loud confession from the stage startles them both. They look toward the festival stage where a large crowd has gathered for the event. The girl on stage accepts the confession as the crowd cheers and the new couple poses for a photo. Mako-chan claps for the couple on stage and asks if the girl was the one they saw earlier. Sakurai-san notes that the confession seems to have been a success. The festival crowd shouts their congratulations to the new couple on stage. Sakurai-san watches the scene and comments on how nice the situation is. Sakurai-san turns to Mako-chan and asks him what he thinks dating is actually like. Mako-chan looks up at the sky and ponders the idea of dating. Sakurai-san says that dating must be so much fun, and Mako-chan repeats the word back to her in surprise. Sakurai-san describes the various joys of being in a relationship, like holding hands on the way to school and making lunches for each other. Sakurai-san smiles and concludes that being with the person you love must be a lot of fun overall. Mako-chan stares at her in silence with a slight blush on his face. Mako-chan looks down and quietly considers her words while Sakurai-san insists that she is right. Sakurai-san leans back slightly and asks Mako-chan if he agrees with her. Mako-chan starts to say her name but gets flustered. Sakurai-san stands up and asks him if he remembers the conversation they had on the school roof. Sakurai-san walks a few steps away and reminds him of the place where confessions are rumored to always succeed. Sakurai-san looks back over her shoulder and asks him what he would think if they were at that place right now. Mako-chan sits on the grass and stares up at her with a heavy blush and a shocked expression. Mako-chan stands up and looks at Sakurai-san with a determined, blushing face. He takes a firm step forward on the grass and calls out her name. Sakurai-san turns to him and asks what he needs. Mako-chan opens his mouth and begins to say what is on his mind. Just as he starts to speak, their friends tumble out from their hiding spot and crash onto the grass. Two of the girls pick themselves up from the ground while rubbing their heads. The friends offer a nervous apology for the interruption while Sakurai-san glares at them in silent anger. The group tells the two not to mind them and quickly runs away. Sakurai-san shakes with rage and embarrassment over the ruined moment. Sakurai-san puts her hand out and tells Mako-chan to wait. She looks down and lets out a long, heavy breath to collect herself. A long, awkward silence follows as the two of them stand near each other without speaking. Sakurai-san suddenly shouts that they should go dance since there is a campfire, leaving Mako-chan confused. Sakurai-san grabs Mako-chan and pulls him toward the bonfire. The friends hide around the corner of the building and panic, fearing that Sakurai-san is going to kill them for their terrible timing. One girl tells her friend that they are co-conspirators in the day's events. Another friend says that despite Sakurai-san's likely anger, she is glad things are going well between her and Mako-chan. The girls stand together and watch the pair from afar. A girl remarks that she has never seen Sakurai-san look like that before. Her friend agrees and notes that she looks just like a girl in love. The friends decide to buy Sakurai-san some cake as an apology and resolve to hear her out about her feelings later that night. Inside a classroom, the teacher announces that the students will have new seating arrangements. The classroom is full of noise as students discuss their new positions. A student celebrates being moved to the back row while the teacher reminds them to stay quiet for other classes in session. Mako-chan takes his new seat in the back row and feels pleased with the location. The teacher instructs the class to finish moving their belongings during the break. Sakurai-san leans over Mako-chan's desk and announces that she will be sitting right next to him from now on. Mako-chan reacts with surprise. Mako-chan blushes and offers a brief acknowledgement. Sakurai-san sits at her new desk and smiles at Mako-chan while he remains stiff in his seat. The teacher begins a lecture at the chalkboard. As Mako-chan focuses on taking notes, Sakurai-san repeatedly peeks over at him from her desk. The teacher tells the class to turn to the next page. Sakurai-san thinks to herself for a moment before looking at Mako-chan with a bright expression. Sakurai-san calls out to Mako-chan while he is working. Sakurai-san asks Mako-chan to show her his textbook. He agrees and moves his book over so they can, which makes her very happy. Sakurai-san thanks Mako-chan as they move their desks closer together, and he tells her it is no problem. Sakurai-san leans her shoulder against Mako-chan's while they take notes, causing him to blush and freeze in place. Mako-chan feels the physical contact and tries to pull away slightly to regain his composure while they continue their work. Mako-chan realizes the proximity is becoming a distraction and tells himself he needs to focus on the class. Sakurai-san suddenly leans in and blows into Mako-chan's ear, making him jump in his seat from the shock. Mako-chan stands up abruptly during the lecture, drawing the attention of the entire classroom. Mako-chan holds his ear in a panic while a bright red blush covers his face. Sakurai-san buries her head on her desk and giggles uncontrollably. Sakurai-san looks up laughing and apologizes, explaining that she just could not resist teasing him when she saw him sitting like that. Mako-chan asks what she thinks she is doing. Sakurai-san admits she didn't realize his ears were so sensitive, but Mako-chan loudly denies it while still blushing. Mako-chan insists that anyone would have a strong reaction if someone did that to them out of nowhere. Sakurai-san looks at him with a skeptical smile. Sakurai-san leans her face back into Mako-chan's personal space and asks if he would be fine with it if she did not do it suddenly. Sakurai-san nudges Mako-chan and suggests they try it again right now. Mako-chan sighs and reluctantly agrees to her persistence. Sakurai-san gazes at Mako-chan with a mischievous look as she gets ready to lean in once more. Sakurai-san leans toward Mako-chan's ear and announces that she is starting. Sakurai-san blows air into Mako-chan's ear again, causing him to squeeze his eyes shut and blush even deeper. Sakurai-san leans in and puts her mouth against Mako-chan's ear while they are sitting at their desks. Sakurai-san nibbles on Mako-chan's earlobe. Mako-chan reacts with total shock and turns bright red. She continues to nibble on his ear as he breaks out into a cold sweat. Mako-chan keeps his mouth open in a daze while he tries to process what is happening. Sakurai-san keeps her face pressed against his ear for another long moment. Mako-chan's eyes swirl and his blush deepens as the physical contact continues. Sakurai-san slowly begins to pull away from his ear. Mako-chan drops his head onto his desk and complains that it was not fair. Sakurai-san laughs at his embarrassed reaction. Both of them rest their heads on their arms and look at each other. Sakurai-san asks him if the experience was amazing, and he gives a weak affirmative. Sakurai-san looks up at him and admits that she thought the moment was heart-pounding. Mako-chan continues to stare at her with a flushed face. Sakurai-san asks Mako-chan if he wants to try doing the same thing to her. She tilts her head and tells him that she is all his for the taking. Mako-chan swallows nervously and looks at her. Mako-chan leans in close to Sakurai-san while she remains resting on her desk. Mako-chan leans in and makes a sound near Sakurai-san's ear. Sakurai-san lets out a muffled exclamation. Mako-chan looks surprised and wonders what that cute noise was while staring at the back of her head. Sakurai-san covers her mouth and blushes deeply as Mako-chan watches her from behind. Mako-chan laughs and points out that her ears are sensitive too. Sakurai-san shouts back that he is wrong and explains that she only reacted because he blew on them instead of biting them like she expected. Mako-chan continues to laugh at her reaction. The teacher shouts for them to be quiet while they continue their loud bickering in the middle of class. Sakurai-san pouts after being scolded while Mako-chan offers a quick apology. Winter arrives at the school as icicles begin to hang from the rooftops. Mako-chan walks through the snow-covered street bundled up in a heavy coat and scarf. A hand reaches out toward Mako-chan from behind as he walks alone. Sakurai-san jumps out and scares Mako-chan, then laughs and greets him for the morning. Mako-chan tells her she has to stop doing that because his heart almost gave out. Sakurai-san laughs it off and mentions that she forgot her gloves. Sakurai-san holds up her bare hands and suggests that Mako-chan should help keep them warm. Mako-chan asks if she is serious. Mako-chan reaches into his pocket and reveals that he has hand warmers with her. Sakurai-san complains that it is unfair and begs Mako-chan for the hand warmers. He refuses, stating that he would be cold as well. Sakurai-san asks if she can use them for just a little while as they walk along the snowy sidewalk, but Mako-chan continues to decline. She pouts in frustration at his decision. Sakurai-san gets a mischievous expression, and Mako-chan asks her what is on her mind. Sakurai-san suddenly thrusts her hands into Mako-chan's coat pockets. He warns her that it is dangerous to walk that way, but she notes that he would not his hand warmers. Sakurai-san looks up at him and asks if this arrangement is acceptable. Mako-chan stammers an agreement as they walk closely together, their hands sharing his pockets. The two of them continue their walk in a blushing silence through the cold winter air. A classmate named Nasuno-kun spots them and offers a morning greeting to Sakurai-san. Another classmate, Hayasaki-san, also says morning and notes that the pair is early today. Nasuno-kun mentions that while he is always early, it is unusual for Sakurai-san. She explains that she has morning practice today. Sakurai-san tells Mako-chan she has to leave and says goodbye as she runs ahead to join their friends. Sakurai-san looks back over her shoulder and asks Mako-chan if he is coming. Mako-chan blushes as he watches her walk away into the distance. Mako-chan looks down at his hands and thinks to himself that Sakurai-san was correct after all. Sakurai-san blows on her hands to warm them up while Mako-chan watches her from behind. Mako-chan exhales a cloud of cold air as they continue their walk through the winter morning. He feels the heat emanating from the hand warmer inside his coat pocket. The two of them walk side by side in silence, both blushing from the cold and their proximity. They make their way down the snow-covered street toward the school. Mako-chan stays close to Sakurai-san, keeping his hand near the pocket she is using. He looks over at her and prepares to move his hand. Mako-chan slides his hand into the same pocket Sakurai-san is using to stay warm. Sakurai-san notices the contact and looks up at him with a deep blush. She flashes a cheerful peace sign and remarks on how nice and warm it is now. Sakurai-san giggles to herself while Mako-chan wonders if the hand warmer is really the only thing providing so much heat. Mako-chan peeks at her before finally mustering the courage to take a firm hold of her hand inside the pocket. The two continue their walk, secretly holding hands away from the eyes of others. They blend in with the other students as they reach the final stretch of the path to the school. Sakurai-san turns to him and offers her thanks for the hand warmer. Mako-chan keeps his hand tucked into his pocket along with hers as they walk. Sakurai-san pulls her hand out of Mako-chan's pocket. Mako-chan watches her with a surprised look as he breathes out a cloud of steam. Mako-chan calls out to Sakurai-san as they reach the school entrance. Mako-chan hands Sakurai-san a hand warmer, noting that she looked cold. She accepts it with a smile and thanks him. Sakurai-san smiles and tells Mako-chan that she will just touch him if she gets cold again. Sakurai-san waves and tells him she will see him in class. Mako-chan holds his blushing cheeks in shock. Mako-chan stands alone on the path processing what she said. He lets out a long breath and looks down, still feeling flustered. Mako-chan looks at the hand warmer in his hand and thinks about seeing Sakurai-san in class. Later at school, Mako-chan sits with his friend during lunch. The friend mentions that Christmas is coming up and he wants a girlfriend. The friend calls out to Makoto while he is eating his lunch. The friend asks if he and Sakurai-san are dating, causing Makoto to spit out his food in surprise. The friend tells him to face the other way if he is going to spit like that. He points out that the two have been inseparable lately and were even flirting in class. Makoto insists that he has it all wrong. The friend says he thinks Sakurai-san likes him, which shocks Makoto. Makoto looks away and argues that she is just friendly with everyone, so it only looks that way. The friend claims she would not get that close to him otherwise, then laments his own lack of a girlfriend. Makoto blushes as he thinks about Sakurai-san's behavior. Sakurai-san brushes Mikan's hair while she tries to eat. Mikan asks her to stop, but Sakurai-san insists on continuing. Sakurai-san leans in to smell Mikan's hair and asks if she switched her shampoo. Mikan makes a noise of discomfort as Sakurai-san notes that it smells nice. Both Sakurai-san and Yuki lean into Mikan, causing her to let out a loud shout. Takahisa-kun watches the group while he finishes his lunch. Sakurai-san laughs while Mikan yells in frustration at her friend's teasing. Mako-chan watches the scene from his desk while Takahisa-kun leans back and relaxes after eating. Mako-chan eats his sandwich and tells himself that Sakurai-san is simply friendly, with everyone dismissing the idea that her behavior toward him is special. The sun shines outside as the focus shifts to the school vending machines. Mako-chan grabs a bottle from the machine and hears a familiar voice nearby. Mako-chan peeks around the corner and sees Sakurai-san sitting at an outdoor table with Takahisa-kun. The boy mentions it is unusual to see her without her friends. Sakurai-san explains that her friends went to a mixer without her. Takahisa-kun notes that he rarely sees her by herself either. Mako-chan stares at the two of them with a neutral expression. Mako-chan assumes that she acts the same way with other boys and feels relieved that he didn't get the wrong idea about her feelings. He walks away looking dejected. Mako-chan decides it is time to go home as he walks away. Behind him, Sakurai-san asks Takahisa-kun what he is drinking. Takahisa-kun identifies his drink as energy oolong tea. Sakurai-san wonders if it tastes good and says she would understand if she tried it herself. Sakurai-san asks if she can have a sip of the drink. Mako-chan overhears this and reacts with total shock. Sakurai-san holds out a drink and asks Mako-chan if he wants some as a form of payback. Mako-chan clutches his chest and refuses the offer while wondering why he is reacting so strongly. Mako-chan watches Sakurai-san from a distance and decides he will just buy a cola for himself instead of approaching her. Mako-chan notices Sakurai-san and the other boy walking in his direction and panics, trying to find a place to hide. Sakurai-san walks along the path with her drink while Mako-chan remains hidden behind a wall. The day continues as the season begins to change. The trees stand bare against the winter sky over an empty playground. Mako-chan sits alone on a park bench and looks up at the clouds. Sakurai-san approaches and asks Mako-chan if his drink is yummy. Sakurai-san takes a sip of her energy oolong tea and tells him that she feels the same way. Sakurai-san laughs happily as Mako-chan watches her. He starts to think that he might be the only one she treats as someone special. Sakurai-san leans over Mako-chan, causing him to blush intensely as her face approaches his. Sakurai-san looks Mako-chan in the eyes and calls him by his name. Sakurai-san leans in extremely close to Mako-chan while he remains frozen on the park bench. Mako-chan reacts with total shock and shouts out as he nearly falls over from her sudden proximity. Sakurai-san laughs and explains that she saw Mako-chan earlier and wanted to walk home with him. Mako-chan is startled and asks her why she would do that. Sakurai-san sits on the bench and asks if he gets it now. Mako-chan stares ahead in a daze and says that he does. Sakurai-san takes a sip of her drink and asks if Mako-chan is heading straight home. He confirms that he is. Sakurai-san suddenly holds her drink out and asks if Mako-chan wants some. He reacts with total shock. Mako-chan frantically declines the offer, but Sakurai-san leans into his ear and whispers that he is special and the only one she would drink with. Sakurai-san keeps her face extremely close to his and continues her sentence. Sakurai-san holds the drink and refers to it as a D-love that is just between the two of them. Mako-chan panics and wonders if she meant the drink or if she actually likes him. Sakurai-san looks at him with a blank expression as he asks what she meant. Sakurai-san places a finger against her lips and gives Mako-chan a mischievous smile. Mako-chan stares at her with a bright red face, completely stunned by her behavior. Mako-chan looks up at the clouds and desperately wonders what she actually meant by her words. Sakurai-san suddenly leans in with a determined look and begs Mako-chan to help her study for finals. Mako-chan agrees to the request, and Sakurai-san expresses her great relief and gratitude. Sakurai-san says they should not waste any time and starts leading him away while he looks on in confusion. The school day ends and the building stands quiet under the afternoon sun. Mako-chan stops in his tracks, confused to see that they have arrived at Sakurai-san's gate. Standing outside the house, Mako-chan shouts in shock as Sakurai-san stands in the entryway and tells him to come inside. Sakurai-san leads Mako-chan into her bedroom and tells him to sit wherever he likes while he nervously thanks her for the invitation. Sakurai-san leaves the room to prepare a few things, leaving Mako-chan alone to wait. Mako-chan stands still, processing the fact that she told him to sit down. He looks around the room at the bed, the chair, and the floor cushions, wondering which spot would be the best place to sit. A sudden intense thought begins to take hold of Mako-chan's mind. He has a brief scandalous fantasy of Sakurai-san posing on the bed, but he immediately panics and shouts that such a thing would never happen. Mako-chan clutches his chest and tries to compose himself, repeating that he only came over to study. Despite his denials, he can't help but wonder for a split second if something might actually happen. Sakurai-san returns to the room and apologizes for the wait, causing Mako-chan to scream in surprise. Mako-chan and Sakurai-san scramble apart as Sakurai-san's mother stands laughing in the doorway. The mother teases Sakurai-san for being so bold before they are even dating, while Mako-chan stammers out a greeting. The mom leans in close to Mako-chan to address him, while Sakurai-san tries to get her to stop. The mother reveals that Sakurai-san talks about Mako-chan all the time and tells him he is just as cute as she described. A blushing Sakurai-san shouts at her mother to get out of the room. The mother remembers her reason for coming and tells them both to come downstairs because dinner is ready. Mako-chan is surprised when the mother specifically tells him to eat with the family. The mom asks if he is okay with staying, and Mako-chan nervously agrees to join them. A large spread of food is laid out on the dining table for the group. Sakurai-san's father sits across from Mako-chan and stares at him with a stern, intimidating expression. The mother and Sakurai-san smile as the mom tells her husband she is glad he arrived home early. Mako-chan feels incredibly tense as he sits at the table, unable to relax under the father's gaze. The family and their guest begin the meal, but the atmosphere remains thick with silence. The father continues to stare intensely at Mako-chan, making him more nervous as they eat. The awkward silence persists at the table while the mother and daughter exchange food. Sakurai-san breaks the tension by using her chopsticks to feed Mako-chan a piece of food she says is really good. Sakurai-san smiles and asks Mako-chan if it tastes good while he sits there blushing and surprised. The father clenches his fist in frustration as he watches the two of them being affectionate. The mother speaks up and tells Mako-chan that she is quite confident in the food she made as well. The mother holds out a piece of fried chicken and tells Mako-chan to open wide so she can feed him. Mako-chan waves his hands frantically and tells her that he really couldn't accept being fed by her. The mother teases him by asking if he only wants to be fed if Sakurai-san is the one doing it. Mako-chan blushes and admits that might be true, which leaves Sakurai-san looking very happy. Mako-chan looks down in embarrassment after his honest confession. Sakurai-san beams at him and asks again if the food was good, and Mako-chan confirms that it was. The mother laughs and remarks that Mako-chan is actually very similar to the father. The mother teases Sakurai-san about how she used to say she would marry her daddy, but Sakurai-san insists that Mako-chan is nothing like her father. Mom asks her daughter if she has feelings for someone else now, while Mako-chan listens in silence. Sakurai-san looks toward Mako-chan and confirms that she does indeed have someone she likes. Mako-chan blushes and stammers while Sakurai-san gives him a knowing smile. The father maintains a stoic and unreadable expression while the mother continues to laugh. Sakurai-san tries to feed Mako-chan another piece of food, but he insists that he is capable of feeding himself. The father watches the interaction between the two teenagers with a sharp and focused gaze. Mako-chan nervously eats the food while Sakurai-san watches him with a delighted and happy expression. The father shuts his eyes as he continues to process the situation at the table. Once the meal is finished, the mother and Sakurai-san stand at the sink to wash the dishes together. A fresh cup of coffee and a cold glass of beer are placed on the table in the living room. Mako-chan and the father sit together on the couch, both taking quiet sips of their drinks. The two of them remain in a heavy silence as they continue to drink. The father finally breaks the silence and calls out to Mako-chan. The father asks Mako-chan for his opinion on their family's cooking, and Mako-chan enthusiastically replies that it was very good. The father takes another sip of his drink while Mako-chan sits in a rigid, polite posture beside him. The father sets down his glass and admits that Sakurai-san has never brought a boy home before, but it clearly seems like she has taken a liking to Mako-chan. Mako-chan is left wide-eyed and silent by the father's blunt observation. Mako-chan blushes and mutters to himself that it would be great if she really did feel that way about him. The father stares forward with a heavy silence, keeping his thoughts to himself. The father explains that Sakurai-san is just like her mother and asks Mako-chan if her behavior is a problem or difficult for him to deal with, but Mako-chan insists she isn't a problem at all. Mako-chan tells the father that they started talking when she gave him a drink, though he admits he was confused at first because he never knew what she was thinking. He continues by saying that as they hung out and studied together, She was always there by his side. Mako-chan smiles warmly and confesses that being with her is a really comfortable feeling. He adds that he has so much fun whenever he is with her, and the father simply responds that he sees. Sakurai-san suddenly leans over Mako-chan's shoulder to ask what they are talking about, causing him to jump in surprise. The father laughs and says he was thinking about telling stories from when Sakurai-san was little, which makes her shout at him not to say anything weird. The mother joins them on the sofa and offers to tell her own set of stories about when Sakurai-san was in grade school, prompting more protests from her daughter. The parents laugh together as they joke about her baby stories, while Sakurai-san yells that those topics are strictly off-limits. Sakurai-san tries to physically stop her parents from talking while Mako-chan watches the three of them and laughs at their lively family dynamic. Mako-chan prepares to head home and puts his shoes on at the entryway. Mako-chan thanks Sakurai-san for the dinner as she apologizes for her family making such a fuss, though he insists they are nice people. Sakurai-san looks at him with a serious expression and asks for confirmation, to which Mako-chan quietly agrees. The two of them stand together outside the front door in the dark. Mako-chan stops walking and speaks up, catching Sakurai-san's attention. Mako-chan mentions that winter break is starting once their exams are over and suggests they do something together to unwind. He officially asks if she would like to go somewhere with him, leaving Sakurai-san momentarily stunned. Sakurai-san reaches out and grabs a handful of Mako-chan's jacket. She holds onto his coat and quietly gives her consent to go out with him. Sakurai-san suddenly shouts her excitement, surprising Mako-chan with her sudden change in volume. They both cheer and resolve to give their absolute best on their upcoming exams so they can enjoy their date. Inside, the parents sit on the sofa and reflect on how much their daughter has grown up. The mother leans into the father and tells him that seeing Mako-chan reminded her of how he used to be when they were younger. She whispers a suggestive comment about their plans for later that night, which causes the father to sputter in embarrassment. The mother laughs and tells the father that he and Mako-chan are very much alike in how they react. The father lets out a deep sigh of exhaustion once the house is quiet again. Mako-chan walks home under the starry night sky while Sakurai-san waves goodbye, and he admits to himself that he is no match for her family's energy. During winter break, Mako-chan waits on a bench and smiles as he sees an incoming notification from Sakurai-san. Sakurai-san sneaks up and presses her cold hands against his cheeks, teasingly claiming that nothing beats using him as a hand warmer. Mako-chan asks her to stop surprising him like that, but Sakurai-san just laughs and sits down to start their date. Sakurai-san keeps her hands on his blushing face and suggests a different way of touching him. She smiles at him and asks if he is actually comfortable with her holding his face like this. Mako-chan nervously agrees, and after a laugh, Sakurai-san declares that they are going to have a lot of fun today. They arrive at the entrance of a large entertainment center together to begin their outing. As they walk through the building, Mako-chan notices how much the place has changed since his last visit. They stop at a claw machine where Sakurai-san finds a Shiba plushie drinking juice particularly adorable. Sakurai-san teases Mako-chan by saying the plushie looks just like him when he is drinking oolong tea. Sakurai-san beams with joy as she hugs the prize that Mako-chan won for her. Sakurai-san praises Mako-chan for being a natural at claw machines, while he modestly says he is just glad he could get one. Sakurai-san notices the photo booths and suggests they go together, which surprises Mako-chan since he has never used one before. Mako-chan and Sakurai-san enter the photo booth together. Sakurai-san announces she's going to use every filter available and teases Mako-chan about his upcoming transformation. Sakurai-san tells Mako-chan to get closer as they prepare for the first shot. Mako-chan shifts awkwardly while she gets ready to take the picture. They pose for several photos with Sakurai-san making rabbit ears and then applying a cat filter that adds ears and whiskers to both of their faces. The filters make Mako-chan's eyes sparkle as Sakurai-san pulls him into a close embrace for the final set of heart-filled pictures. The machine finishes processing and drops the printed sheet of photos into the collection tray. Mako-chan is shocked by his distorted appearance in the photos, while Sakurai-san bursts out laughing at how the filters made him look like a hottie. Sakurai-san gets a sudden idea and asks Mako-chan to hand over his phone. Though confused, he complies as she prepares to do something with the device. Sakurai-san sticks one of the small photos onto the back of his phone so they have matching cases. She beams with pride at her work. Mako-chan stares at the matching photo in wide-eyed silence, his face turning a deep shade of red. Mako-chan panics about the photo being out in the open where everyone can see it. Sakurai-san tells him he can just hide it behind a case if he's embarrassed, but she is fine with it being visible. Sakurai-san hugs her plushie and tells him she is okay with the matching stickers as long as he is comfortable with it too. Mako-chan is left completely flustered and speechless by her earnest expression. He quietly agrees to her request, and Sakurai-san smiles and suggests they take more photos together in the future. The two of them spend the rest of their date visiting the batting cages, singing at karaoke, and bowling together. Night falls on the city as a full moon rises high into the sky. Mako-chan checks his phone and is shocked to see how late it has gotten. Sakurai-san says the day flew by and feels like she could keep going until tomorrow. Sakurai-san remembers that winter break officially starts tomorrow, and Mako-chan confirms that is true. Mako-chan asks what her plans are for the end of the year. Sakurai-san explains that she usually goes to her grandmother's house to eat soba for the new year. The two of them realize that they probably won't be able to see each other again until the new year begins. They continue walking along the empty sidewalk together. They reach a corner and stand under the light of a street lamp. Sakurai-san points out that the way to her house is in one direction. Mako-chan acknowledges that his home is the other way. Sakurai-san looks down at her prize and confirms that it is time for them to head home. The red pedestrian signal stays lit at the crosswalk. Sakurai-san calls out to Mako-chan as he starts to walk away, causing him to stop and turn back. She opens her mouth as if to say something important but hesitates. Sakurai-san changes her mind and tells him never mind. Mako-chan turns his attention back to the signal as it changes. Mako-chan bids farewell to Sakurai-san with a smile. Sakurai-san smiles back and tells Mako-chan she will see him later. Mako-chan arrives at the train station and passes through the ticket gate under the starry night sky. The digital display board at the station shows that the local trains are running. He walks down to the platform where several people are waiting for the next train. Mako-chan stops in front of a vending machine on the platform. He looks at the various drinks displayed behind the glass. He notices a new ultimate version of energy oolong tea and decides to buy a can. Mako-chan holds the drink and imagines telling Sakurai-san about it, picturing her getting excited and wanting to try it. A small smile forms on his face as he thinks about her reaction. He looks away and continues walking alone down the quiet platform. The train arrives at the station as Mako-chan stands ready to board. He pauses for a moment, his thoughts still lingering on the day's events. Mako-chan realizes he could just tell her about the drink over the phone and looks down at the photo booth sticker on the back of his device. He gazes at the image of Sakurai-san's smiling face on the sticker. Mako-chan continues to stare at his phone while standing on the platform. He remains still, his boots planted firmly on the ground as he waits to go home. Mako-chan thinks back to Sakurai-san happily announcing that they now have matching phone stickers. Mako-chan's foot pivots as he makes a sudden decision to leave the station. He remembers her gentle expression as she said she was fine with their matching photos as long as he was too. He takes a deep breath and prepares to sprint away from the platform. Mako-chan launches himself forward and begins running back toward her house. As he runs, he remembers her asking him what he thinks it means for two people to date. He pictures them holding hands while walking to school and feeding each other lunch while he continues to race through the streets. He acknowledges that while they might fight sometimes, the overall experience of being by her side would be worth it. The thought of having so much fun with her gives him the strength to keep pushing himself. Mako-chan finally arrives at her neighborhood, gasping for air as he nears her home. He hunches over in front of the Sakurai residence, completely exhausted from his sudden run. A voice calls out his name from behind, and he turns around in total surprise. Sakurai-san walks toward him with a bag from the convenience store, surprised to see him there when he should be getting home. She asks what brings him back to her house, and Mako-chan stammers that a new drink just came out. He holds up the can of Ultimate Energy Oolong Tea and explains that he wanted to show her right away. Sakurai-san wipes the sweat from Mako-chan's face and teases him for running all the way back when he could have just sent her a message. Mako-chan explains that he specifically wanted to tell her about the new drink face to face. Sakurai-san looks at him with a warm and satisfied smile. As they start walking again, Mako-chan suggests that they keep each other company for a little while longer. Sakurai-san turns around with a happy grin and asks if he really wants to stay out with her, and Mako-chan confirms that he does. A large group of friends gathers inside a karaoke parlor and makes sure everyone has a drink in their hand. The group raises their glasses together to start the celebration. Everyone cheers and shouts a Merry Christmas greeting while sitting around a table covered in snacks. One of the girls passes the karaoke remote to AI, while Yuzuki realizes that this is actually her first time attending a party. Mako-chan laughs about the bar not having any energy oolong tea, while Yuzuki watches him thinking about how they have never spoken, despite being in the same class. Yuzuki judges Mako-chan from across the table and decides that his looks are nothing special. She continues her silent assessment and thinks that he doesn't seem like a very reliable type of person. Yuzuki wonders what made Sakurai-san fall for him since he doesn't sit well with her. Sakurai-san tells the group she's going to get more drinks and heads for the door. Once they are alone, Yuzuki suddenly calls Mako-chan by his first name, which leaves him completely surprised. Mako-chan becomes visibly nervous as Yuzuki continues to stare at him while the rest of the friends are distracted by the television. Yuzuki asks Mako-chan when he and Sakurai-san started getting so close, and he tells her that it began this past spring. Yuzuki stares at Mako-chan and asks what the two of them usually talk about, and he replies that they mostly just engage in small talk. Yuzuki leans in close and asks how far he has gone with Sakurai-san, which sends Mako-chan into a panic, as he insists they aren't like that. Their friends interrupt the awkward conversation and pull Yuzuki away so they can all sing karaoke together. One of the boys puts a hand on Mako-chan's shoulder to check on him while Yuzuki clenches her fists in the background. Yuzuki vents to her friend about how mealy-mouthed Mako-chan was being and admits that she just snapped at him. Sakurai-san returns to the table and sits with Mako-chan, and the two of them begin laughing and drinking again. Yuzuki continues to sing while watching the couple from across the room, still wondering what Sakurai-san sees in him. The party atmosphere continues as the group celebrates. The scene shifts to the hallway near the restrooms where the sound of water can be heard. Mako-chan and Sakurai-san run into each other in the hallway and realize that different friends invited them to the same party. Yuzuki peeks around the corner and hides while she secretly listens to their conversation. Mako-chan asks Sakurai-san if she had any other plans for Christmas, but she tells him that she didn't have any at all. Sakurai-san gives him a flirtatious look and says she is glad she got to spend her Christmas with him anyway. Mako-chan is left stunned by her confession and accidentally lets his glass slip from his hand and fall to the ground. Yuzuki watches from the corner, thinking that Sakuya should finally be fed up with Mako-chan after his mistake. In the hallway, Sakuya helps Mako-chan clean up the broken glass while teasing him for his clumsy behavior. Yuzuki stares toward the pair, noticing a change in Sakuya's expression. Sakuya laughs and smiles brightly while spending time with Mako-chan. Yuzuki continues to watch with a stunned, blank expression on her face. Yuzuki looks down at her hands, realizing she had no idea Sakuya was capable of looking so happy. Yuzuki looks up at the sky and decides that she is fine with the situation as long as Sakuya is happy. The group finishes their time at the karaoke bar and prepares to head home for the night. Yuzuki stops Mako-chan near the exit and asks to speak with him for a moment. Yuzuki tells Mako-chan that while Sakuya seems patient and persistent, she won't be able to wait for him forever. Yuzuki kicks Mako-chan in the backside and stomps off in a huff, leaving him shouting in pain. Mako-chan clutches his leg and watches in confusion as Yuzuki storms away. Sakuya watches from the doorway as Yuzuki leaves the area. Sakuya asks Mako-chan if something happened with Yuzuki, but he brushes it off and says it was nothing. Mako-chan turns to Sakuya and asks her if she would like to go get something to eat. Sakuya smiles and agrees, and the two of them walk together through the streets decorated for Christmas. It is January 20th, and the students are sitting through a lecture about the differences between ideals and reality. The teacher continues his lesson, explaining that individuals must make sacrifices in order to achieve their goals. Mako-chan falls asleep at his desk while the teacher continues to speak. A hand reaches across the gap between the desks toward Mako-chan's face. A finger pokes Mako-chan right in the cheek while he is sleeping. Mako-chan wakes up with a start and sees Sakurai-san laughing at him for falling asleep. Sakurai-san leans in close and whispers a morning greeting to him. A flustered Mako-chan quietly returns the greeting. The teacher keeps writing on the board as half an hour passes during the class. Mako-chan feels relieved that the poke from Sakurai-san managed to wake him up. Mako-chan notices a movement beside him and looks over in surprise. Sakurai-san has fallen fast asleep with her head resting heavily on Mako-chan's shoulder. Mako-chan is stunned and looks down to confirm that she is actually leaning on him. Mako-chan watches her sleep, surprised that she was the one who ended up nodding off. Mako-chan reaches out as Sakurai-san stirs in her sleep, and a new idea suddenly occurs to him. Sakurai-san remains asleep on Mako-chan's shoulder while his heart begins to race from the contact. Sakurai-san starts talking in her sleep, calling Mako-chan a dummy and an idiot. Mako-chan is confused as Sakurai-san continues to mumble insults like dim wit and bird brain while she sleeps. Mako-chan wonders what Sakurai-san is dreaming about as she calls him a nincompoop. Mako-chan reaches over and shakes Sakurai-san's shoulder to try and wake her up. Instead of waking up, Sakurai-san snuggles closer and tugs on Mako-chan's jacket while calling him a dummy. Mako-chan calls Sakurai-san dense while she continues to lean against him and cling to his arm. Sakurai-san grips Mako-chan's sleeve tightly and begins to speak his name. Sakurai-san leans in and whispers that Mako-chan is a pervert and a horned dog, leaving him stunned. Sakurai-san winks and reveals she was awake the entire time. Mako-chan realizes she was faking it as she continues to tease and laugh at him. Sakurai-san explains she was pretending to be asleep to give him a chance to get her back for earlier. Mako-chan sighs in frustration while she laughs. Sakurai-san leans on her arms and tells Mako-chan it is too bad he did not take the opportunity to get her this time. Mako-chan buries his head in his arms and sighs before looking back up at Sakurai-san. Sakurai-san giggles to herself while resting her head on the desk. The two students rest their heads on their desks together, and Sakurai-san tells Mako-chan that he is just so dense. Makoto packs up his belongings as his friend heads out for the day. He looks down at his desk, still hearing Sakurai-san's voice in his head calling him dense. Makoto remains standing by the classroom window, appearing deeply lost in his own thoughts. Makoto looks down at his school jacket, noticing the small wrinkles in the fabric left behind from where Sakurai-san was grabbing it earlier. Makoto considers that he might be more of a loser than he is actually dense. In the background, Yuzuki walks by and calls someone a loser. Makoto gazes out into the distance and admits to himself that Sakurai-san's assessment was correct. Makoto stands alone in the classroom, a dark silhouette against the bright light of the window. Sakurai-san suddenly appears with her hair tied in a new style, brightly calling out a greeting to Makoto. Makoto stares at Sakurai-san in total shock while she giggles at his speechless reaction. Sakurai-san twirls around to show off her new hairstyle and asks Makoto how he thinks she looks. Makoto asks what has gotten into her, and Sakurai-san explains that she saw something interesting in a special edition magazine. Sakurai-san holds up a magazine featuring a ranking of hairstyles designed to make a boyfriend's heart beat fast. Makoto is stunned as Sakurai-san tells him that she decided to try the advice from the magazine to see if it would work. Sakurai-san looks over her shoulder with a smirk and notes that she doesn't actually have a boyfriend yet. Sakurai-san steps closer to Makoto, causing him to blush deeply as she continues to wait for his reaction. Sakurai-san leans in with a smirk and asks Makoto if she actually managed to make his heart skip a beat. Sakurai-san flicks Makoto on the forehead and tells him to take that for his earlier behavior. She then asks him if he doesn't think every guy has different preferences when it comes to things like hairstyles. Sakurai-san leans in extremely close to Makoto's face and tells him that she is specifically asking for his own opinion. She adds that she is only interested in listening because it is him. Sakurai-san asks Makoto directly what kind of hairstyle he would actually want to see on his girlfriend. Makoto blushes and opens his mouth to give her a serious answer. Makoto takes a moment to think while his face remains red from the question. Sakurai-san tells him she was just kidding and reminds him that they need to go change for their next class. Makoto ignores her attempt to change the subject and starts to give his answer anyway. Makoto tells Sakurai-san that he would prefer for his girlfriend to simply pick whatever hairstyle she likes for herself. Sakurai-san is caught off guard by his sincere response and listens as he continues to explain himself. Makoto looks down and confesses that his feelings for her wouldn't change at all regardless of what kind of hairstyle she chose to wear. Sakurai-san stares at him with wide eyes and a deep blush, while Makoto sincerely tells her that she would look cute in any kind of style. Sakurai-san playfully hits Makoto and tells him that his words were unexpected. She teasingly asks if he says those kinds of things to every girl he meets. Makoto suddenly grabs Sakurai-san's sleeve and firmly insists that he does not say things like that to other people. Sakurai-san is left completely speechless and flustered by his sudden outburst of honesty. Makoto looks away with a small smile and tells her that he definitely wouldn't say something like that to just anyone. Sakurai-san stands frozen in shock while Makoto looks back at her with an embarrassed but determined expression. Makoto continues to hold onto Sakurai-san's hand after his sudden declaration. Makoto turns away with a bright red face and hurriedly tells Sakurai-san that he is heading off to change for PE first. Makoto rushes out of the classroom telling her he will see her later while she stands there in confusion. Sakurai-san remains in the classroom stunned into silence as the door slides shut behind him. Sakurai-san looks down at her hands trying to process the serious things Makoto just told her. Sakurai-san covers her face with her hands overwhelmed by embarrassment. She stays hunched over hiding her face while her heart continues to race. Sakurai-san peeks out from behind her hands with a massive blush on her face. Sakurai-san sits down and stands up repeatedly, unable to stay still due to her restless nerves. She takes a deep breath in trying to regain her composure. Sakurai-san sits back down and lets out a long breath, staring down at her own hands. She looks up at the sky and wonders what exactly Makoto meant by his comment. The next morning, Makoto arrives at school and walks through the halls while other students greet each other. Makoto leans against the wall in the hallway and covers his face, wondering how he can face Sakurai-san after his confession. In the distance, Sakurai-san walks past with a friend. Makoto stands in front of the classroom door taking deep breaths and trying to work up the courage to go inside. Makoto peeks into the classroom and is immediately spotted by Sakurai-san. She calls out to him cheerfully while he stands there in shock. Sakurai-san excitedly tells Makoto about a cute puppy she saw while shopping the day before. Makoto stands there confused, wondering if the events of yesterday are even on her mind. Makoto stammers out a greeting and Sakurai-san asks if something is wrong. He quickly insists that nothing is the matter at all. Sakurai-san gives him a bright smile and wishes him a good morning again. Sakurai-san suddenly holds out a gift-wrapped box of chocolate for Makoto. Makoto realizes it is Valentine's Day and wonders if the gift is just courtesy chocolate. Sakurai-san explains that she gave chocolate to everyone this year. Makoto holds the gift tightly and remarks that preparing so much must have been a lot of work for her. Sakurai-san smirks and tells him he better eat it with gratitude, and a blushing Makoto agrees. Makoto looks at the gift tag addressed specifically to him and decides he will treasure every bite. Makoto sits at his desk looking at the chocolate while Sakurai-san hands out more gifts to other students. Makoto notices that Sakurai-san is giving out generic bags of courtesy white chocolate to the other boys. He looks down at his own gift and realizes his is wrapped much more carefully than theirs. Makoto blushes as a realization begins to dawn on him. Sakurai-san gives a smug, knowing look that suggests Makoto is indeed the special one. Sakurai-san asks him if something is wrong, and a sweating Makoto admits he noticed his wrapping was different from everyone else's. Sakurai-san smirks and asks if he finally noticed the difference. Sakurai-san leans in and starts to reveal a secret truth to Makoto. She leans close and confesses that she made that specific chocolate just for him. Sakurai-san admits she isn't confident in her cooking, but worked super hard on it. Makoto is shocked to learn she made it herself while she nervously fidgets with her fingers. Makoto is overwhelmed and begins to ask her a serious question about what this gesture means. Sakurai-san looks at him with a puzzled expression. Makoto stammers as he asks if he should consider this gift to be something special between them. Sakurai-san stands in silence, her expression going blank and wide-eyed at the direct question. She starts to blush and stutters, unable to find the right words to respond. Makoto gulps nervously as he waits for her answer. Both of them stare at each other, their faces turning completely red with embarrassment. Sakurai-san looks down and begins to whisper that she guesses it is special. Suddenly, she shouts "Rower" and retracts her statement, surprising Makoto with her abrupt change in tone. Sakurai-san quickly turns and starts walking away, leaving a confused Makoto standing by his desk. She reaches the classroom door, blushing and covering her face while hurrying to leave. Sakurai-san calls out a quick goodbye and slips out of the room, leaving Makoto reaching out after her. Makoto slumps down, letting out a long sigh of relief and exhaustion while looking at the chocolate in his hands. He looks up at the cloudy sky and wonders about her confusing final words. Sakuya returns home from school and is greeted by her mother in the hallway. Sakuya freezes when her mother asks if she managed to give Makoto-kun his chocolate. Her mother teases her, guessing that something even better must have happened. Sakuya stands there blushing and unable to respond. Sakuya tells her mother it is none of her business and stomps up the stairs while her mother comments on the feelings of youth. Sakuya collapses face down onto her bed as soon as she enters her room. She buries her face in the pillow and groans about how embarrassing her life is. Makoto looks at the handmade chocolate bag and remembers Sakuya telling him that she made it specifically for him. Makoto blushes deeply as he contemplates the meaning behind the gift. He holds the bag and thinks about the fact that she made it just for him. The date on the calendar shifts to March 14th, which is White Day. The students attend their classes while the teacher writes on the chalkboard. Makoto watches Sakurai-san from across the classroom and contemplates his upcoming confession. He briefly imagines himself making a dramatic confession with a huge bouquet of roses before immediately cringing at the idea and hiding his face. He decides that a normal, straightforward approach would be much better. Makoto performs a deep bow in front of Sakurai-san and loudly asks her to go out with him, leaving her completely stunned. Makoto imagines a poetic confession but immediately second-guesses himself while leaning on his desk. Makoto bangs his head on the table and wonders how anyone even manages to confess to someone. Sakurai-san sneaks up and tries to get Makoto's attention while he is lost in his own frustration. Makoto jumps in surprise when he finally notices her laughing at him. Sakurai-san points out that the school day is over and a flustered Makoto stammers that nothing is wrong. Makoto hands over a high-end White Day gift and Sakurai-san is impressed by how nice it looks. Sakurai-san asks if she can eat it immediately and Makoto tells her to go ahead. Sakurai-san sits on a desk and takes a bite of the gift. Sakurai-san smiles as she tastes the gift and finds it delicious. Sakurai-san praises the taste and Makoto tries to gather his courage to start his confession. Sakurai-san asks if he has tried any yet, and Makoto stammers that he couldn't get a second one for himself. Sakurai-san tells him to open his mouth and feeds him a piece of the candy. Sakurai-san asks if it tastes good and Makoto agrees as she hops down from the desk to leave. Sakurai-san gives him a warm thanks and Makoto politely accepts her gratitude. Makoto hurries away with an embarrassed look, realizing that despite his efforts, their interaction feels exactly the same as always. Makoto clutches his chest as his heart pounds with the resolve to finally make his confession. Makoto confirms that today is White Day before suddenly calling out to Sakurai-san to get her attention. With a bright red face, Makoto tells Sakurai-san that there is something important he has been wanting to say to her. Sakurai-san watches him with wide eyes and a deep blush as she waits for him to speak. Makoto begins his confession by telling her that he likes her sunny and cheerful personality. He continues by listing all the things he likes about her, including her smile, her eyes, and her voice. Makoto clenches his fist while thinking about how much he wants to be closer to her and everything on his mind. Makoto opens his mouth to continue his speech, but finds himself struggling to form the next sentence. He stammers and trails off as the sheer volume of his feelings becomes too overwhelming to put into words. The silence stretches on as Makoto realizes he has no idea how to explain the rest of his feelings to her. Makoto struggles to speak as his mind overflows with truths that he cannot figure out how to organize. Makoto stands lost in his thoughts, still trying to work out how to tell her about his feelings and how much he liked her chocolate. Sakurai-san stands across from him looking completely confused by his long silence. Makoto tries to find his voice again, but Sakurai-san has already grabbed her bag and thanks him for the White Day cookies. Sakurai-san smiles and waves goodbye as she heads out for the day, leaving a stunned Makoto standing alone. Makoto reaches his hand out into the empty space where Sakurai-san stood moments ago. He pulls his hand back and clenches it into a tight, frustrated fist. Makoto stands alone in the classroom looking down as his long shadow stretches toward the door. Just outside the classroom door, Sakurai-san sits hidden against the wall in the hallway. Sakurai-san leans her head against her arms and quietly calls Mako-chan an idiot. The following day, Sakurai-san greets Mako-chan with a wave and a cheerful smile, catching him off guard as he stammers a greeting back. The two of them stand in the classroom facing each other in an awkward, heavy silence. Makoto sweats nervously while Sakurai-san looks away and sets her bag down on a desk. Makoto awkwardly mentions how warm the weather has been lately, and Sakurai-san quietly agrees that it has. Makoto continues to sweat under the pressure of the silence as Sakurai-san stands nearby with her back to him. Sakurai-san suddenly shifts her position and sits down on a desk, causing it to clatter loudly and making Makoto jump. She remains seated on the desk looking away from him as the tension persists. Sakurai-san pulls out her phone and begins scrolling through it while Makoto looks on with an unsure expression. Sakurai-san speaks his name, causing Makoto to jump again and frantically ask what it is. Makoto quickly changes his mind and tells her to never mind trying to force a normal smile. Makoto and Sakurai-san sit in their respective places, both appearing uncomfortable as the silence continues. The clock on the classroom wall shows it is almost 5 o'clock, while the two students remain seated in the empty room. Makoto looks toward the window with a nervous expression, while Sakurai-san keeps her head turned away from him. Makoto realizes that they haven't had a proper conversation after school in quite some time. Sakurai-san remains silent, sitting on the edge of a desk nearby. Makoto stammers as he tries to speak, but he quickly loses his nerve and looks down in defeat. Sakurai-san fidgets with her hands and looks down, appearing just as tense as Makoto. Makoto glances at Sakurai-san with a pained expression while she remains focused on the floor. Sakurai-san suddenly announces that it's time for her to go home and stands up to grab her bag. Makoto is startled by her sudden departure, finding himself completely unable to utter a single word to stop her. Sakurai-san looks back over her shoulder and says goodbye to Mako-chan before heading out of the classroom. Makoto reaches out as the door closes, left alone in the quiet room. A dark silhouette of Makoto stands in the classroom, reflecting his feelings of isolation. Makoto stands in the center of the room and wonders how he used to talk to her so easily before everything became so complicated. He recalls how Sakurai-san was always the one to reach out and call his name, first realizing he had taken her constant presence for granted. Makoto clenches his fist in frustration, calling himself a coward for being unable to reach out to her without having an excuse. Makoto considers giving up, thinking he has reached the limit of his feelings and questioning if he even has a place by Sakurai-san's side as he is now. He stands alone in the dark, looking down with a dejected expression. Makoto clenches his fist tightly and resolves that he will never give up. He realizes that there is no way he can just give up and that his feelings haven't reached their limit at all. Makoto looks at Sakurai-san and knows that he still wants to be with her. He remembers Sakurai-san asking him what he thinks dating is really like. Makoto gazes ahead, thinking deeply about her question. Sakurai-san smiles and asks if dating means not needing a reason to be by the side of the person you love. Makoto stands stunned by the simplicity and weight of her words. He clenches his hand and looks up as cherry blossom petals begin to fall, realizing that they have always been by each other's side. Makoto runs through the school building, acknowledging that he had no idea how to convey his feelings, and that was why he couldn't move forward. As he continues to run, he finally understands the one thing he wants to tell her more than anything else. He thinks about how much he wants to see Sakurai-san and tell her exactly how he feels. Cherry blossom petals drift past the rows of drinks in a vending machine. Sakurai-san sits alone on a bench in the courtyard under the blooming cherry trees. Sakurai-san looks up toward the sky as cherry blossom petals drift through the air. She holds her hand out to catch a single falling petal. The petal lands in the center of her open palm. Sakurai-san remains standing among the petals scattered across the ground. She looks down at the ground and lets out a long, weary sigh. Makoto suddenly calls out to her, catching her by surprise. Makoto stands at the edge of the courtyard, panting and out of breath from running to find her. Makoto expresses his relief that she is still there. Sakurai-san explains that she was visiting the courtyard to see the cherry blossoms because they are the prettiest thing there. The two students stand together beneath a large cherry blossom tree in full bloom. Makoto gazes up at the canopy of flowers above them. He remarks that the flowers bloomed much faster than he had realized, while Sakurai-san watches him from her seat on the bench. Makoto begins to recount his early thoughts about her, while Sakurai-san listens to him with a quiet expression. He explains that because he felt so dull and ordinary, he used to wonder why someone as popular and cute as her would ever bother talking to him. Sakurai-san listens to his explanation with a small smile on her face. Makoto tells her that he eventually realized she has always been by his side before he even knew it. Sakurai-san laughs and smiles as she listens to Makoto speak. She flashes a peace sign and beams, remembering how much fun they had together. Her expression softens into a blush as she gazes toward him. Makoto looks down and explains that because they had so much fun, he simply wanted things to stay that way forever. He starts to look more serious and nervous as he prepares for his next words. Makoto stands firmly and admits that he eventually began to take her constant presence for granted. He looks up with a determined expression, decided that he cannot keep going the way he has been. Makoto tells her that he wants a relationship where he doesn't need a reason to be with her at any time or place. Sakurai-san is stunned and begins to blush deeply as he says he wants this to continue even after they graduate and become adults. He promises that he wants to be with her always as the cherry blossoms drift through the air. Makoto declares his desire to always be by her side, and the weight of the words causes Sakurai-san to start tearing up. Sakurai-san stands frozen as tears begin to stream down her face in silence. She touches her face in surprise and asks herself why she is crying all of a sudden. She laughs nervously while wiping her eyes, asking Makoto to give her just a second to compose herself. Sakurai-san covers her blushing face with her hands, completely overwhelmed by his confession. Sakurai-san admits she was worried that she was being a bother to him or that he might actually dislike her. Makoto listens as she continues, and her expression turns more positive. Sakurai-san looks at Makoto with a bright smile and confesses that she really likes him too. The two of them, a happy moment together, laughing and blushing under the cherry blossom trees. Makoto and Sakurai-san stand close together and hold hands. Sakurai-san reminds Makoto of a promise she made about giving him a prize if he ever figured things out. She leans in and asks him if he finally figured it out. Makoto takes a moment to think about his answer. Makoto asks if the reason was just because he was there. He then tries to play it off as a joke, but his face is red. Sakurai-san gives a small, knowing smile. Sakurai-san leans in and gives Makoto a kiss on the cheek. Sakurai-san beams at him and says that he finally noticed. In a new scene, Makoto checks the time on his phone and looks up as he waits in a park filled with cherry blossoms. Makoto leans against a rail and waits for someone to arrive. Sakurai-san sneaks up behind Makoto and covers his eyes with her hands, asking him to guess who it is. Makoto smiles and tells her he knows exactly who she is while Sakurai-san giggles behind him. Sakurai-san asks if she kept him waiting, but Makoto says it wasn't a problem as the two of them walk away holding hands. The two of them hold hands tightly and prepare to begin their flower viewing date. While sitting on a picnic blanket under the trees, Sakurai-san asks Makoto if he is truly satisfied with a simple flower viewing trip for their first official date. Sakurai-san reveals a large spread of handmade food she prepared in several bento boxes. Makoto asks in surprise if she made all the food herself, and she jokingly calls the effort part of her housewife training. Sakurai-san picks up her chopsticks and reminds Makoto of his promise to always stay by her side. She holds a piece of food out to Makoto and tells him to open wide for a bite. Makoto takes the bite and nods his head enthusiastically when she asks if it is tasty. Sakurai-san pumps her fists and cheers, thrilled that he likes the food she made. She continues to feed him more, telling him that she brought plenty of food too. Makoto tells her that she looks like she is having a wonderful time, and she giggles happily. Sakurai-san leans against Makoto and explains that she wanted to come to the park because she finally got to do something she always wanted to try as part of a couple. Sakurai-san asks if there is anything specific that Makoto would like to try doing with her. Makoto thinks it over and says that just being by her side makes him so happy that he can't think of anything else on the spot. Sakurai-san nuzzles against him and asks again if there is really nothing else he wants, opening her arms wide to offer him whatever he likes. Makoto blushes and stammers a response as Sakurai-san offers him a lap pillow. Sakurai-san wiggles her fingers playfully toward Makoto while calling his name. He watches her hands nervously and asks what she is doing. Sakurai-san suddenly grabs Makoto and pulls him toward her, catching him completely off guard. Makoto falls onto Sakurai-san's lap and realizes he is resting his head on her thighs. He blushes furiously at the sudden physical contact. Sakurai-san looks down at him and asks if this lap pillow was what he really wanted. Makoto stammers that he doesn't really know. Sakurai-san tells him that it certainly is, adding that she has always been watching him. Makoto sits up from her lap and asks Sakurai-san if there are things she specifically wanted to do now that they are dating. Sakurai-san lists off a variety of couples' activities like holding hands, studying together, and being called by her first name. Makoto contemplates the idea of switching to a first-name basis. Sakurai-san adds with a smile that she also wants to keep teasing him. Makoto laughs and says he would actually prefer it if she stopped the teasing. Sakurai-san wonders if anything about their dynamic has actually changed at all. Sakurai-san leans in close to his face and points out that some things have definitely changed. Sakurai-san leans forward and kisses Makoto while cherry blossom petals fall around them. Sakurai-san pulls away with a blush covering her mouth and giggling happily. Sakurai-san tells a very flustered Makoto that they are finally allowed to do things like that now. Makoto stares at her in silence for a moment before quietly saying her name. Makoto reaches out and gently places his hand on Sakurai-san's face. Makoto beams and confesses his love for Sakurai-san. She looks at him with a gentle, blushing face while he continues to hold her cheek. Sakurai-san happily agrees and nuzzles into his palm. The pair remain together under the blooming cherry trees as their journey concludes.